Beneath the surface of our world's oldest myths lies a story that refuses to fade. A story of a time before time, when ancient civilizations thrived and vanished long before the first stones of recorded history were laid. Legends speak of a catastrophic flood, a deluge so immense it erased entire worlds, leaving only fragments of memory buried in ruins, carvings, and whispered traditions. But what if these weren't just allegories? What if they were traces of something real, an epic of human history lost to the waters of oblivion? From the shadowy remains of forgotten cities to strange megaliths aligned with the stars, we find silent evidence that challenges everything we think we know. How did our ancestors, thousands of years before known civilizations, possess knowledge of the heavens, of engineering, of mysteries we still cannot explain? And what secrets still lie hidden beneath the oceans, waiting to be uncovered? Tonight, we step into the unknown, into a world before the flood. So sit back, relax, and let's dive deep into the mysteries that history tried to wash away. High above the golden sands of Egypt, where the Nile winds its way like a living ribbon through the desert, stands the Giza Plateau, a place where stone and time converge in silence. Here, the great Sphinx gazes eastward toward the rising sun, its enigmatic expression frozen for millennia. Behind it, the monumental pyramids rise with a geometry so precise that even now, with modern instruments, their alignment with the cardinal points defies easy explanation. For centuries, archaeologists and historians have studied these wonders, seeking to place them firmly within Egypt's dynastic timeline. And yet, whispers of something older linger, a tale of a forgotten epoch, spoken of in the ancient texts as Zep Tepi, the first time. In the hieroglyphs carved into temple walls, the ancient Egyptians describe Zep Tepi not as myth, but as history. It was said to be an era when the gods themselves walked upon the earth, when divine rulers established order, and when civilization began. To most Egyptologists, this is understood as mytho-poetic language, a symbolic narrative meant to glorify kingship and connect pharaohs to the divine. But others look at these accounts differently. Could the first time refer to a distant prehistoric age, a period long before the reign of Narmer and the unification of Egypt around 3100 BC? If so, what traces of that forgotten age might still lie hidden beneath the sands? The idea of Zep Tepi has long fascinated scholars and seekers alike. On the one hand, we have the verified history, the Old Kingdom's architectural genius, the dynastic records, the clear evolution of art and culture across centuries. On the other, there are anomalies, features of the ancient landscape that seem to resist easy categorization. The Sphinx itself is a prime example. Mainstream archaeology dates it to the reign of Pharaoh Khafra, around 2500 BC. But some geologists, such as Robert Schoch, have suggested that the erosion patterns on the Sphinx's enclosure may be the result of heavy rainfall more consistent with a climate that ended thousands of years ago earlier, long before dynastic Egypt emerged. Could the Sphinx, then, be a remnant of Zep Tepi? The pyramids, too, raise questions. Their precision, their astronomical alignments, and the sheer scale of construction continue to puzzle. Ancient Egyptian records credit their building to human kings and laborers, not to gods or lost civilizations. Yet some researchers point out that the pyramids encode knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and even geodesy at a level unexpected for their supposed era. The Orion correlation theory, for example, proposes that the three Great Pyramids mirror the stars of Orion's belt, an association that would tie the monuments to the celestial figure of Osiris, the god of rebirth. If intentional, could this be a symbolic echo of Zep Tepi, when gods and stars were thought to govern both earth and sky? Beyond Giza, the Nile Valley itself holds further enigmas. Sites like Abydos, with its mysterious Osirian, a subterranean temple built of massive granite blocks, suggest a depth of engineering and vision unusual for its context. The Osirian appears to mimic archaic styles, not typical of the period in which it was supposedly built. Some scholars believe it was deliberately archaized, a conscious attempt to link later dynasties to the mythic past of Zep Tepi. Others wonder if it is a genuine survivor of an earlier epoch, a relic of a forgotten world whose memory was woven into Egypt's myths. And then there is the broader question of cultural memory. Flood myths and tales of lost golden ages appear in civilizations across the globe, from Mesopotamia to Palestine, from the Indus Valley to Mesoamerica. Could Zep Tepi represent Egypt's version of that same shared memory? A distant time of upheaval when ancient peoples recorded the transition from chaos to order, from survival to civilization? Or does it reflect something deeper, a dim recollection of a real, advanced culture swept away by catastrophe? Mainstream historians caution against overextending such parallels. Oral traditions and mythic cycles often contain archetypes rather than literal memories. The Egyptians may have simply projected their ideals onto a mythical past, using Zep Tepi to legitimize the divine nature of pharaonic rule. Yet even within that explanation, the persistence of the motif, the insistence on a beginning time when gods and men interacted, remains striking. Why was the story of Zep Tepi so important that it was etched into temples, recited in rituals, and bound to the very identity of Egypt? In recent decades, technology has added new dimensions to this inquiry. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and underwater surveys have revealed that much of the ancient landscape remains unexplored. Beneath the sands, beneath the waters of the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, ruins lie waiting. Some suggest that hidden chambers still exist under the Giza Plateau, perhaps containing records or artifacts that could illuminate the truth of Egypt's distant past. So far, such claims remain unproven, but the mere possibility keeps the mystery alive. The Zep Tepi Epoch is, in many ways, a mirror. It reflects back to us our deepest questions about origins, time, and the fragility of human memory. Was it simply a myth? A poetic way of expressing the dawn of order and kingship? Or does it conceal a historical truth, the shadow of a civilization erased by flood, sand, and time? As the desert wind sweeps across the plateau and the Sphinx stares unblinking into the horizon, the questions remain. Could the first time have been real? And if so, how much of it still lies hidden, waiting for us to uncover? As we leave behind the echoes of Egypt's Zep Tepi, with its tantalizing hints of a forgotten epoch, we find ourselves drawn eastward, toward the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, where another mystery emerges from clay and legend. Here, in the cradle of civilization, archaeologists uncovered fragments of cuneiform tablets, their wedge-shaped impressions pressed into wet clay thousands of years ago. Among these brittle relics lies one of the most perplexing records of human memory, the Antediluvian king lists. At first glance, these ancient lists appear straightforward. They catalog the reigns of kings in Sumer, long before the dynasties we can easily trace through archaeology. The tablets read almost like ledgers, a ruler's name, his city, and the length of his reign. Yet it is in those numbers that the mystery begins. Some kings are said to have reigned for hundreds, even thousands of years. One text, the Sumerian king list, claims that before the Great Flood, 10 kings ruled for a combined 241,200 years. After the flood, reigns suddenly shorten, becoming more familiar, decades, lifetimes, spans we can understand. Mainstream historians often interpret these exaggerated numbers as symbolic, not literal. Perhaps they represent dynasties compressed into a single name, or serve as theological metaphors, elevating early rulers to the level of semi-divine beings. But still, one must ask, why such extraordinary figures? Why record reigns of thousands of years at all? Was it simply myth-making, or could these numbers hint at a distorted memory of something we no longer comprehend? The intrigue deepens when we consider parallels from other traditions. In the Hebrew Bible, the genealogies of Genesis describe patriarchs who lived astonishingly long lives before the flood. Methuselah at 969 years, Noah at 950. After the Deluge, lifespans contract, aligning more closely with human norms. The resonance between Mesopotamian tablets and biblical texts raises questions about shared cultural memory. Did both traditions spring from the same deep reservoir of stories, passed down from a time when oral history was the only bridge across generations? The tablets themselves, housed today in museums from Baghdad to Berlin, are unassuming to the eye. Small, weathered, sometimes incomplete. Yet what they contain challenges our sense of history's boundaries. If these were mere myths, why present them in the structured format of a king list, a genre usually reserved for official records and chronicles? Why blend names we can verify, like Gilgamesh of Uruk, with names wrapped in the haze of impossibility? It is as though history and legend were deliberately interwoven, with no clear line dividing them. Scholars have long debated the purpose of these lists. Some argue they were political tools, crafted by later dynasties to legitimize their rule by linking themselves to an ancient, almost divine lineage. Others suggest they were theological works, framing human kingship as a gift bestowed by the gods after the chaos of the flood. And then there are those who entertain more speculative interpretations. Could these lists preserve a dim memory of an antediluvian civilization, one that flourished before a global catastrophe reshaped the world? This brings us to the most provocative question of all, the flood itself. The Sumerian king list explicitly divides history into two halves, before the flood and after. The event is not presented as metaphor, but as a defining rupture in time. Archaeology has confirmed that devastating floods did occur in Mesopotamia, some large enough to leave lasting impressions on collective memory. But was there a single cataclysmic flood, the same remembered in Mesopotamia, in Egypt, in Palestine, and beyond? Or were these many floods woven into one archetypal story that traveled across cultures? Consider, too, the possibility of encoded knowledge. Some researchers have proposed that the immense rains might not measure literal years, but cycles of time, lunar months, astronomical periods, or symbolic numbers pointing to patterns we have yet to decode. If true, then the king lists may not be fantasy, but rather a complex calendar, a record of eras hidden within myth. And yet, the lists remain stubbornly ambiguous. They resist simple categorization, hovering between the factual and the fantastic. We can verify parts of them. Certain kings, certain cities, certain sequences align with archaeology. But the antediluvian portion stands apart, shielded by myth, daring us to interpret. Were these early kings simply legends, or did they belong to a world that truly existed before the deluge? A world swept away, leaving only clay tablets and whispered memory behind. As we study these ancient records, one cannot help but feel a sense of unease, as though peering into a mirror that reflects not only history, but something deeper, a collective memory of beginnings, endings, and the fragility of human civilization. If the antediluvian king lists are indeed echoes of a forgotten epoch, how much of that past still lies undiscovered, waiting beneath the ruins and the rivers? The tablets are silent now, their clay cracked and darkened by time. Yet the words they carry remain, echoing across millennia. Before the flood, kingship was in Eridu. The question lingers, what kind of world was it that these lists remember, And why does its shadow still haunt the records of mankind? From the river plains of Mesopotamia and the mysterious Antediluvian king lists, our journey carries us back once more to the sands of Egypt, toward a monument that has watched over the desert for thousands of years. The great Sphinx of Giza, carved from a single block of limestone, sits crouched at the edge of the plateau, its massive body half buried in the sand, its weathered face gazing eternally toward the rising sun. It is at once familiar and elusive, a symbol of endurance and mystery. Yet, beneath this colossal guardian lies a story that has fueled centuries of speculation. The possibility of a hidden chamber, a so-called Hall of Records. To the casual visitor, the Sphinx is awe-inspiring simply as a work of ancient engineering. Measuring over 240 feet in length and nearly 70 feet in height, it stands as one of the largest monolithic statues on Earth. Mainstream archaeology dates its construction to around 2500 BC, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, whose pyramid rises nearby. In this interpretation, the Sphinx serves as both guardian and symbol of royal power, an enduring link between king, sun, and eternity. But legends surrounding the Sphinx reach far deeper than dynastic Egypt. Ancient Greek writers believed it concealed secrets of the gods. Later, Arab chroniclers told stories of hidden chambers beneath its paws, holding treasures and scrolls from forgotten ages. And in more recent centuries, esoteric traditions and clairvoyant visions have given rise to the idea of a Hall of Records, a subterranean library said to preserve the wisdom of a civilization destroyed by the Great Flood. The very phrase, Hall of Records, evokes images of vaulted corridors filled with stone tablets, golden scrolls, and astronomical charts, a blueprint of lost knowledge sealed away until humanity is ready to rediscover it. According to some traditions, this chamber lies hidden beneath the Sphinx, waiting to reveal truths about the origins of mankind, the rise and fall of ancient civilizations, and even our destiny as a species. But does the evidence support such a claim? In the 20th century, the question moved from legend into the realm of scientific inquiry. In the 1970s and again in the 1990s, teams of researchers used ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys to probe beneath the Sphinx and its enclosure. Some reported anomalies, areas that suggested cavities or hollow spaces under the monument. These findings fueled speculation that the stories of a hidden chamber might have some basis in fact. Yet, excavations permitted by Egyptian authorities have not confirmed the existence of such a chamber, leaving the question unresolved. Archaeologists caution against reading too much into these anomalies. Natural fissures, ancient restoration works, or structural reinforcements could all explain the results. No direct evidence has yet been found of a hidden hall, and Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities maintains that no such structure exists. From their perspective, the Sphinx is remarkable enough without the need for hidden vaults and lost civilizations. Still, the idea persists, nourished by a blend of myth, hope, and unanswered questions. Why, for instance, does the Sphinx's weathering appear so unusual compared to nearby monuments? Some geologists argue that the deep vertical fissures on its enclosure walls suggest water erosion more consistent with heavy rains that ended thousands of years before Khafre's time. If true, could the Sphinx itself predate dynastic Egypt? And if it does, could chambers beneath it preserve records from a much earlier epoch? Perhaps even from the antediluvian world spoken of in texts across cultures? The connection between the Sphinx and the Great Flood is one that continues to draw attention. If the Hall of Records exists, some propose it could contain evidence of advanced knowledge predating the catastrophe that swept away the world's first civilizations. Astronomical data, records of Earth changes, even maps of lost lands such as Atlantis have all been imagined as possible contents of this fabled library. While mainstream science rejects such claims as speculation, the allure remains irresistible. It is worth remembering that ancient Egyptians themselves revered the Sphinx as far older than their own dynasties. The dream stele of Thutmose IV, placed between the Sphinx's paws around 1400 BC, records a vision in which the statue speaks to the young prince, promising kingship in return for its restoration. The language of the stele suggests that by this time the Sphinx was already considered ancient, a relic of a distant past. But how distant was that past? Was it Khafra's reign, or something far older, veiled in the sands of Zep Tepi, the first time? The mystery remains suspended between legend and science, between what can be proven and what lies just beyond reach. If chambers do exist beneath the Sphinx, they remain sealed from our knowledge, their secrets untold. For now, the Hall of Records belongs as much to the realm of imagination as to archaeology, and yet, as the wind scours the plateau and the Sphinx keeps its silent watch, the questions linger. Could there truly be a vault of forgotten wisdom hidden beneath this ancient guardian? Or are we simply projecting our longing for origins, for certainty, onto the stones of the past? What lies beneath the Sphinx may never be revealed. But perhaps that is the heart of the mystery. That after thousands of years, this monument continues to challenge us, to invite us to wonder whether the sands still conceal truths that could transform our understanding of history itself. From the silent watch of the Sphinx and the elusive whispers of a hall of records, our path now turns northward, across deserts and mountains, to the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey. Here, on a windswept ridge known as Gobekli Tepe, lie the remains of a site that has challenged everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization. Massive stone pillars, arranged in circles and carved with intricate reliefs of animals and abstract symbols, rise from the earth like messages from another age. And yet, perhaps the greatest mystery of Gobekli Tepe is not its construction, but its burial. Discovered in the mid-1990s by archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, Gobekli Tepe quickly revealed itself to be far older than expected. Radiocarbon dating places its origins around 9,600 BC, thousands of years before the pyramids, Stonehenge, or even the development of writing. At a time when humanity was thought to live only in small, nomadic groups, here stood monumental architecture, the product of organization, artistry, and shared vision. But as excavations progressed, one startling detail became impossible to ignore. This extraordinary site had been deliberately buried under tons of earth and debris, sometime around 8000 BC. Why would ancient builders, who had invested such enormous effort in shaping and arranging these stones, choose to conceal them? The act was not random. The infill around the pillars contained broken tools, animal bones, and refuse, suggesting a deliberate backfilling process rather than natural erosion or collapse. It was as if the people who once gathered here decided to entomb the site, preserving it for reasons we can only guess at. Mainstream archaeology proposes practical explanations. Perhaps the changing needs of a society in transition, shifting from hunter-gathering to early agriculture, rendered the site obsolete. New settlements and farming communities may have taken precedence, and Gobekli Tepe, once a sacred gathering place, was ritually closed, sealed away as people moved forward into a new era. In this view, its burial marks a symbolic ending, a gesture of respect, perhaps even reverence. Yet questions remain. Why bury it so completely rather than simply abandon it? If Gobekli Tepe was sacred, why not leave it to stand as a testament to their past? The thoroughness of the burial seems almost protective, as though the builders were preserving something, hiding it from view, perhaps even safeguarding it against a future they feared. This opens the door to more speculative interpretations. Some suggest the deliberate burial could be linked to memory of a catastrophe, a flood, an environmental upheaval, or a cosmic event that spurred early humans to shield their sacred site from destruction. Others imagine that the carvings on the pillars, foxes, serpents, vultures, and abstract symbols, may encode warnings or astronomical information preserved in stone for future generations. Was Gobekli Tepe not just a temple, but also a message, a record, a kind of library of stone intentionally hidden until humanity was ready to rediscover it? The site's location adds another layer of intrigue. Gobekli Tepe lies near the Fertile Crescent, the region often called the Cradle of Civilization, not far from where traditions of a great flood first took shape in Mesopotamia and Palestine. Could its burial be connected, symbolically or literally, to the same cycle of destruction and renewal remembered in ancient texts? Was it a response to the trauma of an event that reshaped human memory, leading people to mark the end of one world and the beginning of another? Modern excavation continues to reveal more. To this day, only a fraction of the site has been unearthed, perhaps less than 10%. What remains buried beneath the hillside is unknown, hidden beneath layers of soil laid down by human hands more than 10 millennia ago. The possibility that more circles, more carvings, and perhaps more clues to its purpose remain underground fuels both scholarly inquiry and popular imagination. Yet, as with the Sphinx, certainty remains elusive. Was Gobekli Tepe a temple of the first farmers? A gathering place for hunter-gatherers marking their passage into a new way of life? A ceremonial site linked to the stars and seasons? Or was it something stranger still? An inheritance from a forgotten world, deliberately buried to protect its secrets from the ravages of time and catastrophe. As the sun sets over the Anatolian plateau and the long shadows of the T-shaped pillars stretch across the soil, one cannot help but sense the deliberate hand of those who covered them so long ago. Did they believe they were preserving something vital for the future, or were they simply closing a chapter in their own story? The burial of Gobekli Tepe stands as one of archaeology's greatest riddles. Even as excavations advance and new theories emerge, the deeper question lingers. What truths remain entombed beneath this hill, sealed away more than 10,000 years ago? And when, or if, they are uncovered, will we finally understand why the builders of Gobekli Tepe chose to hide the first great monument of human history? From the buried stones of Gobekli Tepe, where ancient hands concealed their sacred work beneath the soil, our journey now drifts back once more to Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers where some of humanity's earliest stories were inscribed in clay. It is here, among the ruins of Assyria and Babylon, that we encounter another enigmatic thread woven into the fabric of pre-flood memory, the tales of the Apkallu Sages. Carved into bas-reliefs on palace walls and described in cuneiform texts, the Apkallu appear as hybrid beings, part human, part fish, or cloaked in the wings of birds. In the shadowed halls of Nineveh and Nimrud, these figures can still be seen today. Muscular forms with flowing beards, their hands raised in ritual gestures, sometimes holding a bucket and cone as if engaged in sacred purification. To the ancient Mesopotamians, they were not simply decorative. They were guardians of wisdom, bringers of knowledge, and protectors against chaos. The earliest texts describe the Apkallu as 7 sages, sent by the god Ea, known also as Enki, from the deep waters of the Abzu. Their purpose was clear: to bestow upon humanity the arts of civilization. They taught writing, agriculture, temple building, medicine, and the ordering of society itself. In the Sumerian and Babylonian tradition, it is the Apkallu who transform human beings from mere survivors into builders of cities and keepers of culture. And yet, just as with the Sumerian king list, the narrative takes a dramatic turn with the flood. Before the deluge, the Apkallu are depicted as semi-divine, perfect in wisdom and power. But after the flood, the sages who appear are mortal, their lives shorter, their abilities diminished. What does this shift mean? Was it symbolic? A way to mark the rupture between mythic prehistory and historical reality? Or was it a fragment of memory, recalling a time when knowledge seemed to arrive from an external, almost otherworldly source? Mainstream scholarship interprets the Apkallu as mythic figures embodying cultural memory. They personify the moment when early Mesopotamian societies began to organize themselves, when agriculture flourished and temples rose above the plain. In this sense, the Apkallu are less literal beings and more symbols of human ingenuity, elevated to divine status through myth. But the imagery invites deeper questions. Why portray them with the features of fish, birds, and men combined? Why emphasize their emergence from the watery depths? And why did Mesopotamian priests, even in later times, adorn themselves with the Apkallu's symbolic regalia during rituals, as if to channel their authority? These are not idle details. They suggest that the memory of the sages was treated with a seriousness that transcended allegory. Some have speculated that the Apkallu myth reflects encounters with an earlier, advanced culture, one that seemed to arrive fully formed, bearing knowledge alien to the people who received it. Could these stories be echoes of real individuals, remembered as divine because their knowledge was so far beyond the ordinary? Others suggest that the Apkallu represent the archetype of a civilizing hero, a figure who appears across cultures, the bringer of fire, the teacher of laws, the messenger from the gods. Still others take the symbolism further, pointing to the Apkallu's association with water. Could the imagery of beings emerging from the deep have been influenced by memory of a flood, or even by a sense of origins linked to the sea itself? After all, in the Epic of Gilgamesh and other Mesopotamian texts, water is both destroyer and giver of life, the medium through which gods reveal both punishment and renewal. Archaeology can tell us where the Apkallu were depicted, how they were described, and how their imagery was used. But the heart of their mystery remains just out of reach. Did they exist only as mythological constructs, crafted to embody the transmission of culture? Or do they hint at something more, perhaps a chapter of human history lost to catastrophe, preserved only in the guise of myth? When we look upon the carved reliefs today, with their fine detail and commanding presence, it is hard not to feel that the ancient Mesopotamians were recording something they themselves believed to be profoundly real. The Apkallu were not distant deities, but intermediaries, guides between gods and men, wisdom and ignorance, chaos and order. In their story, we glimpse once more that familiar theme. Before the flood, knowledge flowed freely. After the flood, it was fragmented, diminished, scattered. As the dust settles over the ruins of Mesopotamia and the carved figures of the Apkallu stand silent in their stone vigil, the questions remain. Were these sages only myth, or were they messengers of a forgotten epic, remembered dimly across the ages? And if fragments of their knowledge were indeed preserved, how much of it still lies hidden, waiting to be rediscovered beneath the sands and rivers of the ancient world? From the carved figures of the Apkallu Sages, guardians of wisdom who emerged from the deep, we move outward, beyond the ruins of Mesopotamia and the sands of Egypt, into the wide expanse of the Indian Ocean. Here, beneath the restless waters southeast of Madagascar, lies a feature few have ever heard of, yet one that could hold profound implications for humanity's oldest flood traditions, the Burckle crater. Invisible to the naked eye, hidden beneath nearly 13,000 feet of ocean, the crater was first identified in 2006 by researchers using satellite imagery and oceanographic surveys. Circular in form and stretching some 18 miles across, It bears the hallmarks of a massive impact site. To many geologists, such scars on the Earth's surface tell a familiar story, that of asteroids or comets colliding with our planet, events that have shaped the course of life itself. But what makes the Burckle crater so intriguing is not merely its size or location. It is the timing and the echoes of memory it may preserve. Some researchers, including members of the Holocene Impact Working Group, have suggested that the Burckle crater could date to around 3000 BC or earlier. If so, the scale of the event would have been catastrophic. A cosmic body striking the ocean at such force could have generated towering megatsunamis, waves hundreds of feet high racing outward across the Indian Ocean basin. The coastlines of Africa, Arabia, India, and perhaps even lands farther afield would have been devastated. Entire communities, whether nascent agricultural villages or coastal settlements, could have been wiped away in a matter of hours. Is it possible, then, that memories of such a cataclysm found their way into the flood traditions of Mesopotamia, Egypt, or Palestine? Could the global flood myths, long dismissed as allegory or theological narrative, have their roots in real geological events of the distant past? Mainstream scholarship treats such claims with caution. Dating impact sites beneath the ocean is notoriously difficult, and evidence can be obscured by layers of sediment, volcanic activity, or shifting tectonics. The Burckle crater has not yet been drilled or sampled directly, leaving its age uncertain. Some geologists argue it could be far older than proposed, millions of years rather than thousands. Without physical samples, the debate remains unresolved. Yet fragments of supporting evidence invite curiosity. Along the coasts of Madagascar, researchers have identified what appear to be massive chevron-shaped sand deposits, stretching miles inland. These features, some argue, are consistent with the landfall of a colossal tsunami, one far larger than anything generated by known earthquakes or storms. Could these chevrons be silent witnesses to the same event that carved the Burckle crater into the ocean floor? If so, the implications are staggering. A single impact event might have reshaped coastlines, drowned entire regions, and left survivors clinging to memory of a flood so vast it seemed to engulf the world. Oral traditions, passed down through generations, could have transformed that memory into myth. Stories of gods unleashing waters, of arks and survivors, of worlds destroyed and reborn. The similarity of flood myths across cultures has long puzzled scholars. Perhaps events like Burckle offer a geological anchor to those ancient tales. Of course, there are other possibilities. The chevrons may be the product of more ordinary processes, such as shifting sea levels or powerful cyclones. The crater may not be from 3000 BC at all, but from an unimaginably earlier epoch, its connection to human history illusory. Without definitive dating, the link between the Burckle crater and humanity's flood traditions remains speculative. Yet even in uncertainty, the mystery deepens our sense of connection to the past. If humanity did witness an oceanic impact in prehistory, what would it have felt like? Imagine the night sky torn open by fire, the horizon swallowed by waves, and the world forever altered. For those who survived, how could such an experience not become the centerpiece of cultural memory, the defining myth of a generation? As scientists continue to probe the ocean floor, as sediment cores are studied and models refined, the Burckle crater sits silent beneath miles of water, its secrets locked away, its age and story still unknown. Was it the fingerprint of a disaster that seeded humanity's oldest myths? Or is it merely a reminder of Earth's deeper geological history, one that stretches far beyond the reach of human memory? In the end, the Burckle crater forces us to confront a question that echoes through every flood story, every buried ruin, every ancient record we have encountered. How much of what we call myth is history, and how much of history remains hidden, waiting to be uncovered beneath the oceans and the sands of time? From the silence of the ocean floor, where the Burckle crater may conceal the memory of a cataclysm, we turn now to the deserts and hills of the ancient Near East, lands where stories of antediluvian wisdom still echo. Among them is one of the most enigmatic traditions of all, the story of the Pillars of Enoch. Imagine a vast, barren landscape under a sky of shifting clouds. Here, according to legend, once stood monumental pillars, towers of stone or metal, constructed not to honor kings, nor to worship gods, but to preserve knowledge. Ancient texts describe them as repositories of wisdom, erected in a time before the flood, when humanity feared that the coming waters would erase all memory of what had been achieved. The tradition stems primarily from later Jewish and Islamic writings, which draw upon much older sources. Josephus, the first-century historian, records a remarkable tale, that Enoch, or, in some accounts, his descendants, built two great pillars, one of brick, the other of stone, on which was inscribed the knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and the mysteries of the heavens. One pillar was meant to survive fire, the other to endure water. Together, they formed a safeguard, ensuring that no matter what disaster befell the earth, humanity would not be forced to begin again in ignorance. But where, then, were these pillars? Some traditions place them in the lands of ancient Palestine, suggesting they may have once stood near the holy city of Hebron. Others whisper of their existence in Egypt, perhaps hidden beneath the sands, or incorporated into the very foundations of the pyramids. Still others see echoes of their memory in Mesopotamia, where ziggurats rose like stairways to the sky. Could the Pillars of Enoch be less a single structure than a symbolic archetype, a cultural memory of pre-flood knowledge preserved in stone? Mainstream historians tend to interpret the story as allegorical. Ancient peoples, they argue, often imagined wisdom being safeguarded in tangible forms, temples, monuments, or great libraries. The pillars may simply symbolize the continuity of knowledge across cycles of destruction and renewal. In this reading, Enoch's legacy is not a literal tower or monument, but the survival of astronomy, timekeeping, and sacred geometry into the post-flood world. Yet certain details refuse to fade into pure metaphor. The reference to two distinct materials, brick and stone, feels oddly specific, as if recalling actual constructions built with durability in mind. And the connection between Enoch and advanced astronomical knowledge persists across cultures. The Book of Enoch, though excluded from most biblical canons, describes in detail the movement of the stars, the courses of the sun and moon, and the mechanics of celestial gates. Was this merely poetic cosmology, or could it reflect an ancient system of observation far more advanced than we typically credit to humanity in that age? Some speculative theories go further still. They suggest that the Pillars of Enoch may not only have stored written knowledge, but perhaps even technologies or devices, artifacts of a pre-flood civilization lost to time. In these accounts, the pyramids of Egypt or the standing stones of other lands are reinterpreted not as funerary monuments or ceremonial sites, but as survivors of a forgotten age of science. Of course, such claims drift beyond what archaeology can verify. Yet the allure remains. If the ancients truly built monuments designed to withstand fire and flood, could any trace still exist? Might fragments lie buried beneath the sands of Egypt, concealed under temples, or submerged along ancient coastlines now lost to the sea? The story of the pillars also raises a deeper, more universal question. Why does nearly every culture preserve a memory of lost knowledge, of wisdom stored or hidden before a great destruction? From the tablets of Mesopotamia to the myths of Mesoamerica, we find the same theme: the idea that humanity once possessed truths now veiled, and that these truths were deliberately hidden to outlast catastrophe. Is this simply the human fear of forgetting, of being reduced to nothing by disaster? Or does it hint at a real lineage of knowledge passed through secret channels, carried by survivors from one age to the next? The desert winds sweep across the empty landscapes where legends once placed these pillars. Nothing visible remains. No inscriptions in brick, no towers of stone, no monuments to remind us of what may have been inscribed there. And yet, the story lingers, refusing to die. Perhaps the true Pillars of Enoch are not physical structures at all, but something more elusive, the unbroken thread of memory stretching from the dawn of civilization to the present day. Still, the possibility lingers like a shadow. What if those pillars were real? What if they were built? And what if somewhere beneath the earth, under sand or rock, they still endure? And if they do, what knowledge might they still hold, waiting to be uncovered, waiting to change everything we think we know about the world before the flood? From the shadow of the Pillars of Enoch, which spoke of wisdom preserved before the Great Flood, we step into another ancient mystery, one not of monuments, but of flesh and blood. It is a tale that has stirred imaginations for millennia, whispered in sacred texts, and debated across cultures, the mystery of the antediluvian giants, the Nephilim. Picture the rugged hills of ancient Palestine, their jagged ridgelines etched against a sky heavy with storm. In these very landscapes, according to tradition, beings once walked who were not quite like us. They were described as towering in stature, possessing strength beyond comprehension, and a presence that inspired both awe and terror. The primary source for their existence comes from the Book of Genesis. There, in a brief but haunting passage, the text tells of the sons of God who came unto the daughters of men, and from their union giants were born, the mighty men of old, men of renown. The word used is Nephilim, a term still debated by scholars. Some translate it simply as giants, while others see a deeper meaning, those who have fallen, or the fallen ones. What does this phrase mean? Were these beings the offspring of divine beings and mortals, as later interpretations suggest? Or could it be that the Nephilim were simply exaggerated memories of powerful tribal leaders, remembered by their descendants as larger than life? Other ancient texts offer further glimpses. The apocryphal Book of Enoch expands upon Genesis, describing the descent of heavenly beings called the Watchers, who not only took human wives but also imparted forbidden knowledge, astronomy, metallurgy, even sorcery. Their offspring, the Nephilim, were said to grow vast in size, consuming everything in their path until the earth itself cried out against them. Here, the giants become symbols of imbalance, a world out of order before the flood reset the stage. But was this purely myth, or could it reflect something more tangible? Across the Near East, whispers of ancient giants surface again and again. In the land of Canaan, later remembered as Palestine, the biblical narrative tells of races such as the Anakim and the Rephaim, peoples described as unusually large, so fearsome that the Israelites trembled before them. "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes," says the account in Numbers, when spies beheld them. Were these just metaphors for military might, or did they reflect encounters with a people of striking stature? Archaeology has yet to uncover definitive remains of such giants. No skeletons of extraordinary size, no bones that prove beyond doubt the existence of Nephilim. Yet the absence of evidence has not stilled the questions. In folk traditions scattered across the Levant, in Mesopotamia, and even beyond, stories persist of ancient heroes and kings remembered for their giant-like qualities. The Sumerian king lists, for instance, speak of rulers whose reigns stretched into the thousands of years, figures who may echo the same blurred line between myth and memory. Speculative theories abound. Some suggest the Nephilim were not giants of flesh at all, but a metaphor for a once great civilization, towering in knowledge and power compared to those who came after. Others propose a more radical view, that the Nephilim might point to encounters with beings not of this world, remembered through the language and imagery available to ancient peoples. Mainstream scholarship, however, tends to see the Nephilim as mythic archetypes, symbols of chaos, representing what happens when the boundaries between divine and human realms are crossed. To ancient writers, they stood as warnings, embodiments of excess, violence, and corruption. In this light, their destruction in the flood was not just punishment, but a necessary cleansing of a world gone astray. And yet, questions remain. Why do so many cultures, separated by vast distances, preserve traditions of giants before a cataclysm? From the titans of Greek mythology to the enormous builders remembered in the Americas, the echoes resound with uncanny similarity. Could this be coincidence? Simply the human imagination magnifying the past? Or might it suggest that fragments of a forgotten truth have been carried through myth across the globe? Today, when we stand before the towering ruins of megalithic sites, stones so massive they defy explanation, we cannot help but wonder, were these monuments the work of ordinary hands, or the legacy of beings who truly were larger than life? The hills are quiet now, the valleys empty of their ancient inhabitants. No giant strides across the plains of Palestine. No towering figure looks down from the highlands of Canaan. And yet the memory endures, lingering in scripture, in story, in the faint, unsettling sense that something extraordinary once walked among us. Were the Nephilim real beings of flesh and blood, living before the flood? Or are they simply symbols, giants not of stature but of memory, whose shadows stretch into our imagination? The answer remains elusive. But perhaps, somewhere beneath the soil or beneath the waters, evidence still lies buried, waiting to remind us of a world far stranger than we dare to believe. From the shadow of the Nephilim, whose towering presence haunts both scripture and legend, we move deeper into Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. Here, in the dry, cracked earth of present-day Iraq, whispers of another mystery emerge. A city once revered, once luminous, now seemingly lost to time, the hidden city of Sippar. Picture the Euphrates River, winding through barren plains under a relentless sun. Its waters, though diminished today, were once lifelines for thriving cities. Along its banks stood Sippar, one of the great centers of the Sumerian world. Dedicated to Shamash, the god of the sun and of justice, Sippar was famed for its temple, the E-Babar, or Shining House. To its people, it was more than a city. It was a beacon of knowledge, a place where divine wisdom and human endeavor intertwined. Archaeological evidence confirms that Sippar was real. Excavations have uncovered tablets, administrative records, and fragments of monumental architecture. These findings situate Sippar firmly in the 3rd millennium BC, placing it among the prominent cities of the Akkadian and Babylonian periods. And yet, despite what has been unearthed, something crucial remains hidden. Ancient texts hint that Sippar's true legacy lies not only in its bricks and stones, but in what it concealed. The Sumerian king list speaks of antediluvian kings ruling from Sippar, their reigns measured not in decades but in thousands of years. According to this tradition, Sippar was one of the cities established by the gods themselves before the Great Flood swept across the land. Here, the records of humanity were said to have been preserved, texts, maps, and knowledge placed in safekeeping until the waters receded. The Babylonian priest Berossus, writing in the 3rd century BC, claimed that the god Oannes, a mysterious half-man, half-fish being, brought wisdom to humanity and entrusted its records to Sippar. These writings, Berossus declared, were hidden before the Deluge and later retrieved, allowing civilization to rise again. Could Sippar, then, have been more than a city? Could it have been a library, A vault of antediluvian knowledge? Mainstream historians caution us here. They argue that the myths of Sippar are symbolic, reflecting the Sumerians' desire to anchor their origins in divine order and cosmic time. To them, the immense lifespans of antediluvian kings are literary devices, not historical fact. The story of hidden records is interpreted as a metaphor for the continuity of culture, the idea that knowledge survives catastrophe because humans carry memory forward. And yet, the myth persists, resilient and evocative. Some speculative researchers point to hints of undiscovered ruins beneath layers of sediment near Abu Haba, where Sippar once stood. They argue that what has been excavated represents only a fraction of the city's true extent. Could there be sealed chambers still buried, untouched for thousands of years, preserving records that would rewrite history? Even more tantalizing are the echoes of Sippar's legend in other cultures. The idea of knowledge hidden before a great flood recurs in Egypt, in the stories of the Hall of Records beneath the Sphinx, and in Greece, with tales of Atlantean wisdom. Is this a universal myth born of human imagination or the memory of a real event, a time when civilizations anticipated disaster and sought to safeguard their achievements? The fragments we possess, the tablets, the inscriptions, the myths, invite us to ask questions that archaeology cannot yet answer. Was Sippar simply one of many Sumerian cities, no more mysterious than Uruk or Ur? Or did it hold within its walls a deeper secret, one deliberately obscured by time and flood? Standing at the edge of the Euphrates today, with the wind stirring the dust over ruins half buried in sand, one cannot help but wonder, what remains hidden beneath our feet? Could a chamber of ancient texts still lie sealed beneath the earth, waiting for rediscovery? And if so, would those records reveal a forgotten history of humanity, an age before the flood, when kings ruled for thousands of years and knowledge beyond our imagining was already known? The city of Sippar, both visible in fragments and invisible in mystery, continues to haunt the imagination. Its bricks may crumble, its temple long collapsed, but its story endures. Somewhere between myth and archaeology lies its truth. The question that lingers is not whether Sippar existed. We know it did. But whether the real Sippar, the city of legend, is still waiting to be uncovered, buried beneath the sands of Mesopotamia. From the buried ruins of Sippar, where human memory may have preserved knowledge from before the flood, we turn once more to Egypt, to a figure whose name has become synonymous with ancient wisdom. Thoth, the scribe of the gods, the master of time, writing, and arcane knowledge. And in the shadow of his legend lies perhaps the most mysterious artifact associated with him, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Imagine a dark chamber, illuminated only by the soft glint of green light reflecting off a polished stone tablet. Inscribed upon its surface are symbols, letters, or perhaps even entire languages, conveying truths that bridge the mortal and the divine. According to tradition, these tablets hold the wisdom of the cosmos, secrets of alchemy, astronomy, the cycles of life and death, and the mysteries of creation itself. They are said to have been composed by Thoth in a time so distant that even dynasties and civilizations blur into the mists of prehistory. Historical references to Thoth date back to the dawn of Egyptian civilization, around 3000 BC, where he appears as the god of writing, magic, and knowledge. In art, he is depicted as an ibis-headed figure, sometimes carrying a scribe's palette, sometimes a scroll. Later texts, including Hellenistic writings and the Hermetic tradition, link him directly to the Emerald Tablets, presenting him as a teacher who imparted the most profound truths to humanity, often in cryptic or symbolic language. But what exactly are the Emerald Tablets? Mainstream historians treat them cautiously, noting that the earliest known versions appear in translations from Arabic texts of the 6th or 7th century AD, long after the rise and fall of ancient Egypt. Yet the content claims an origin far older, sometimes described as Antediluvian, placing the tablets in a time before the flood, when knowledge was first recorded and preserved. According to legend, Thoth himself transcribed the wisdom to endure disasters, ensuring that future generations could rediscover it. The allure of the Emerald Tablets lies not only in their content, but in the mystery surrounding their existence. Were they literal stones, green as jade, etched with writing now lost to the ages? Or were they metaphorical, a symbolic representation of eternal truths that survive through story, myth, and secret teachings? Alchemists and occult scholars through the centuries have claimed access to their knowledge, interpreting the text as a guide to spiritual transformation, cosmic law, and the hidden structure of the universe. Modern archaeology provides little to confirm their physical existence. No verified tablets have been unearthed in Egypt or elsewhere, yet references to Thoth's writings appear repeatedly across civilizations. Anomalous similarities between Sumerian, Egyptian, and later Greco-Roman texts hint at a continuity of wisdom that seems too precise to dismiss entirely. Could it be that fragments of this knowledge were hidden in secret repositories, perhaps buried during the cataclysms of the pre-flood era, awaiting rediscovery? Speculative theories abound. Some suggest that the tablets may have been stored in hidden chambers beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza or other sacred sites, sealed away by priesthoods who understood the fragility of civilization in the face of natural disasters. Others argue that the Emerald Tablets describe technologies or principles that appear far in advance of what humans are traditionally thought to have known in antiquity: astronomy precise enough to chart the stars, cosmology capable of describing cycles of time that span millennia. And then there is the question of language. The original script, if it existed, is unknown. Some accounts claim a mystical script, incomprehensible to ordinary humans, while others describe an early proto-writing system, long lost. If true, it would suggest that a form of knowledge existed in the pre-flood world, one that required both insight and preservation to survive humanity's subsequent eras of chaos. Yet even in the absence of physical evidence, the story endures because of what it represents: a longing for continuity, for understanding, for knowledge that transcends catastrophe. In every reference to Thoth, in every translation of the Emerald Tablets, there is an insistence that some truths are eternal, surviving even the destruction of cities, floods, and civilizations. As we imagine the green glow of the Emerald Tablets in a hidden chamber, untouched for thousands of years, a question arises. If these artifacts truly existed, what wisdom did they contain? Were they technical manuals, spiritual guides, or something far stranger? Knowledge from a world that existed before the flood reshaped the earth? The Emerald Tablets of Thoth may never be found. Perhaps they are symbolic. Perhaps they are lost to the sands of time. Perhaps they were never physical at all. And yet, their mystery persists, pulling the imagination toward the edge of history, where human memory brushes against something far older and deeper than civilization itself. In the end, the question remains: what ancient truths might still lie hidden, waiting to illuminate the pre-flood world and the wisdom of those who first recorded it? From the luminous glow of Thoth's Emerald Tablets, which hint at wisdom preserved across millennia, we turn now to a text that has stirred curiosity and debate for centuries: the lost Book of Jasher. Unlike stone tablets or hidden monuments, this is a story of words, of a chronicle said to capture the deeds of men and events lost to conventional history, a record that bridges the world before and after the flood. Imagine an ancient scribe seated by the flickering light of an oil lamp, inscribing events onto a scroll of vellum or papyrus. The setting is a quiet, sacred space, perhaps a temple or a hidden chamber, where the scribe's hand moves carefully, preserving memory in the face of catastrophe. The Book of Jasher, known in Hebrew as Sefer HaYashar, is described in the Bible in a few brief references, particularly in Joshua 10:13 and 2 Samuel 1:18, where it is cited as a record of significant events. These fleeting mentions suggest that it was considered authoritative, an annal of history as reliable as the monuments or inscriptions of kings. What makes the Book of Jasher particularly mysterious is its alleged coverage, the Antediluvian world. According to tradition, it chronicled the generations from Adam to the time of the Judges, recounting lifespans, events, and deeds in far greater detail than the canonical scriptures. If authentic, it would offer an unparalleled window into humanity before the flood, the kings, the builders, the giants, the sages, and perhaps even the catastrophes that reshaped the world. Scholars debate its origins. The earliest known manuscript fragments of a text called Jasher date to the medieval period, far later than the Antediluvian era it describes. Yet, some argue that these later manuscripts preserve the memory of much older traditions, transmitted orally or through now lost texts. Could the Book of Jasher be a vessel of memory, a repository for knowledge once inscribed before the Deluge and carefully preserved through generations, like the Pillars of Enoch or the Emerald Tablets of Thoth? The text is said to provide details absent from other records. It recounts the construction of cities, the lineages of early kings, and the lives of extraordinary figures, some of whom are aligned with the Nephilim. Tales of remarkable lifespans and feats of strength are interwoven with accounts of human ambition and divine interaction. These narratives parallel the Sumerian king list and other antediluvian sources, suggesting that fragments of a shared memory may have survived in multiple cultures, even if the originals were lost. Mainstream historians treat the Book of Jasher cautiously, often classifying surviving manuscripts as compilations from the medieval period rather than authentic pre-flood records. They argue that while the text may contain traditional stories, genealogies, and folklore, it cannot be used as historical evidence for events before recorded history. Yet, the persistence of its legend and its consistency with other flood-era myths keeps the possibility alive that it may preserve echoes of something real. Speculative researchers find in Jasher a tantalizing connection between myth and memory. Could it contain details of pre-flood civilizations, lost technologies, or knowledge of catastrophes long forgotten? Some passages describe the behaviors and conflicts of beings with extraordinary abilities, hinting at the coexistence of humans and other larger entities. Others recount natural disasters with a vividness that evokes personal memory rather than abstract myth. Were these accounts storytelling, or were they reflections of collective memory passed down from survivors of a cataclysm? Geography adds to the intrigue. References to places in early Palestine, Mesopotamia, and the lands surrounding the Euphrates and Tigris hint at real locations, sometimes associated with ruins or monuments whose origins remain mysterious. Could these sites be connected to the events described in Jasher? Are there lost cities, hidden chambers, or buried libraries awaiting discovery that might confirm aspects of this ancient chronicle? Even today, the Book of Jasher evokes a sense of something larger than history alone. It asks us to consider the fragility of memory and the endurance of knowledge. If it once existed as a complete work, it may have been deliberately hidden or preserved to survive disaster, much like the Pillars of Enoch or the buried wisdom of Gobekli Tepe. And if fragments remain, whether on stone, clay, or papyrus, they may yet hold secrets that illuminate the pre-flood world. As we imagine the scribe's hand, tracing the lives of the first generations and recording the deeds of giants, kings, and sages, the question persists: what truths were inscribed in the lost book of Jasher, and what has been lost to the waters of time and flood? And if some fragment were to resurface tomorrow, what would it reveal about the world before the deluge? A world that seems at once familiar and impossibly strange, hidden beneath the layers of history and myth? From the lost book of Jasher, where chronicles of pre-flood kings and giants whisper of a world long vanished, our journey now shifts to the distant reaches of the earth, to waters and lands that no longer exist above the waves. We turn to Sundaland, a vast, sunken continent once stretching across what is now Southeast Asia, its plains and forests now hidden beneath the rising seas. Imagine the landscape before submergence: dense jungles teeming with life, rivers carving valleys between hills, and human settlements scattered across fertile plains. Coastal villages thrived, trading along waterways that connected the islands of present-day Indonesia, Malaysia, and Borneo. This was a world of opportunity and abundance, a cradle of early human activity, long before recorded history took shape. And then, slowly, inexorably, it vanished beneath the ocean. Geologists and oceanographers describe Sundaland as a region that existed during the last glacial maximum, around 20,000 years ago, when sea levels were much lower than today. As the ice sheets melted, global sea levels rose dramatically, swallowing vast expanses of land and reshaping coastlines worldwide. Today, the outlines of Sundaland survive only as the islands scattered across the Java, South China, and Sulu seas, a shadow of its former expanse. Archaeological and genetic evidence paints a fascinating picture. Human populations in Southeast Asia, including some of the earliest Homo sapiens outside Africa, appear to have migrated across Sundaland, leaving traces in cultural practices and genetic markers that survive in island populations. Stone tools, pottery fragments, and other artifacts suggest a sophisticated society, intimately connected to its environment and adept at navigating the changing landscape. Yet the full extent of their culture and knowledge remains hidden beneath the waves. The disappearance of Sundaland may hold clues to humanity's flood legends. Could memories of its submergence have traveled across generations, giving rise to myths of drowned lands and catastrophic floods? In some traditions, islands that now exist were once described as remnants of a greater landmass, lost to waters sent by the gods or the whims of nature. Stories from the region speak of ancestral homelands beneath the sea, echoing the same motifs we have encountered from Mesopotamia to Palestine, and even as far as the Americas. Mainstream science views Sundaland Submergence as a gradual geological process. Rising seas, driven by post-glacial melt and tectonic activity, slowly inundated the continent over millennia, reshaping rivers and coastlines and forcing populations to migrate. It was a slow apocalypse, not a single cataclysmic flood. And yet, the human mind remembers not just the facts, but the emotion, the terror of watching fertile lands vanish, the uncertainty of survival, the stories passed down to preserve memory. Could these recollections have formed the core of flood myths worldwide? Speculative interpretations take the mystery further. Some researchers suggest that the survivors of Sundaland may have carried advanced knowledge of agriculture, seafaring, or astronomy into new lands, influencing civilizations from Mesopotamia to the Pacific Islands. Could remnants of a pre-flood culture, lost to the rising ocean, have seeded human ingenuity in distant regions? If so, might the cataclysmic memory of a sunken continent explain recurring motifs of lost lands, advanced pre-flood civilizations, and warnings etched into mythologies across the globe? Moreover, Sundaland Submergence challenges our understanding of human migration and memory. Coastal settlements that once thrived are now unreachable, their artifacts submerged under hundreds of meters of water. What has been lost may be vast, including structures, libraries, and tools. Entire civilizations whose stories survive only as fragments in oral tradition or genetic memory. Can we ever reconstruct the full history of this vanished world? Or will it remain a phantom in the archaeological record? As we trace Sundaland's hidden contours beneath the waves, one cannot ignore the resonance with the other mysteries we have explored. The Pillars of Enoch safeguarding knowledge, the Nephilim towering across landscapes, Sippar and its hidden archives, and the Emerald Tablets of Thoth whispering secrets from a world before the flood. Could Sundaland be another piece in the puzzle? A tangible, geological anchor for memories of cataclysm, preserved in the myths and genes of humanity? Today, divers and scientists probe the shallow seas above the former continent, seeking traces of settlements, tools, or even megalithic structures. Yet the vast majority remains beyond reach, hidden beneath sediment and current. And as the ocean quietly keeps its secrets, the question lingers. What civilizations, knowledge, or histories sank with Sundaland, lost to time and tide? And if fragments endure, buried beneath the waves, what might they reveal about the world before the flood and the extraordinary resilience of human memory? From the sunken plains of Sundaland, where entire civilizations may have vanished beneath the rising seas, our exploration now drifts to another submerged enigma, this time in the clear, cold waters off the coast of Japan. Here lies the Yonaguni Monument, a vast underwater formation that has puzzled scientists, historians, and divers alike. Imagine descending into the depths near Yonaguni Island, the water gradually darkening as the sunlight filters through waves. At first glance, the seabed appears as natural rock, worn smooth by currents over millennia. Yet as the diver approaches, a pattern begins to emerge. Sharp terraces, angular steps, and flat surfaces, stretching across an expanse larger than many city blocks. Massive walls rise from the ocean floor, some carved into what appear to be right angles. One formation resembles a colossal pyramid, with terraces aligned in geometric precision. The lines are too straight, the angles too regular, to be casually dismissed as mere coincidence. First discovered in 1986 by diver Kihachiro Aratake, and later explored by geologist Masaki Kimura, the Yonaguni Monument has sparked a debate that continues to this day. Mainstream geology often attributes the formations to natural tectonic activity and erosion, arguing that the rock, primarily sandstone and mudstone, could fracture in angular patterns under pressure. Earthquakes and currents, they contend, may have sculpted these terraces over thousands of years, creating the illusion of deliberate design. Yet certain features challenge simple explanation. Large, flat surfaces seem too uniform to be purely natural, while protruding platforms and what some describe as carved stairways suggest intentional shaping. Lines reminiscent of roads or avenues appear to intersect at right angles. Some submerged boulders even resemble carved human figures, hinting at artistry, or at least an uncanny mimicry of it by nature. The sheer scale of the site, combined with its geometric precision, invites speculation. Could this be the remnants of an antediluvian city, lost to rising seas at the end of the last ice age? Radiocarbon dating and sediment analysis suggest the site may have been above water as recently as 10,000 years ago, placing it squarely in a period when human populations could have constructed monumental works. This timing aligns with rising sea levels following the last glacial maximum, a period when many coastal and low-lying regions, including Sundaland, were inundated. Could Yonaguni have been part of a broader network of pre-flood civilizations, their cities now swallowed by the ocean? Speculative interpretations extend even further. Some researchers, inspired by myths and local folklore, suggest that the monument was a ceremonial site or a temple complex designed to align with astronomical events or tides. Others argue that its precise angles and terraces indicate knowledge of geometry far earlier than conventional history. Credits to humanity. If true, this could reshape our understanding of early engineering, suggesting that sophisticated civilizations thrived long before the rise of Mesopotamian or Egyptian cities. Yet the mystery persists because evidence is subtle and submerged. No inscriptions have been found, no artifacts definitively associated with human construction. The ocean both preserves and obscures the site, washing away fragile clues while leaving the massive stone formations intact. Divers report an eerie stillness, a sense of vast emptiness surrounding the terraces, punctuated only by the occasional fish or drifting sediment. It is a place that feels alive with history, yet stubbornly silent about its origin. What makes Yonaguni particularly compelling is its resonance with other pre-flood mysteries. Across the globe, from the sunken lands of Sundaland to submerged ruins off the coasts of India and the Mediterranean, we encounter traces of human, or human-like, presence now beneath the sea. Could Yonaguni be one of many fragments, remnants of a global network of settlements that once existed before catastrophic floods reshaped coastlines? Or is it simply a remarkable quirk of nature, a geological accident that mirrors the shapes of human ambition? As we rise slowly toward the surface, leaving the terraces behind, questions linger in the mind. What knowledge did the builders of Yonaguni possess, if indeed it was built? How much of human history lies submerged, hidden beneath the waves, inaccessible to our conventional records? And if we could uncover even a fraction of it, how profoundly might it alter our understanding of the world before the flood? The Yonaguni Monument remains silent, its sharp edges and terraces glimmering in the filtered sunlight, a submerged puzzle that bridges the line between nature and human craft. Whether carved by hands or by the slow work of currents and tectonics, it compels us to look deeper, to question the assumptions of history, to wonder about civilizations lost to the oceans, and to imagine what secrets the depths still hold. From the sunken terraces of Yonaguni, where massive stone formations stir questions about civilizations lost beneath the waves, our journey now moves to the heart of Europe, to a small village along the Danube in what is today Romania. Here, buried in the soil of Tărtăria, archaeologists uncovered a set of small clay tablets that could challenge everything we think we know about the origins of writing, the enigmatic Tărtăria Tablets. Imagine holding one of these tablets, roughly the size of a modern postcard, its surface covered with intricate symbols etched in precise lines. The markings are small, delicate, yet strikingly deliberate, forming patterns that seem more than mere decoration. Some resemble abstract signs, others evocative pictograms, perhaps a sun, a human figure, or a geometric form whose meaning has been lost to time. The tablets were discovered in 1961, alongside a small clay vessel and remnants of a Neolithic settlement in what is believed to have been part of the Vinca culture. Radiocarbon dating places these artifacts around 5,500 to 5,300 BC, making them potentially older than Sumerian cuneiform, the script widely recognized as humanity's earliest known writing system. If this dating is accurate, the Tărtăria Tablets may represent a form of proto-writing, symbols used to convey meaning, perhaps even narrative, long before the rise of Mesopotamian civilizations. Such a discovery pushes the boundaries of our understanding. Could writing have emerged independently in multiple regions, long before conventional history suggests? Scholars remain divided. Some argue that the markings are symbolic or ritualistic, part of religious or ceremonial practices rather than true written language. Others contend that they might represent early accounting, record-keeping, or even a form of storytelling. a way for a prehistoric community to preserve knowledge across generations. The precise meaning remains elusive, shrouded in the obscurity of 5,000 years. The context of the discovery adds to the mystery. The tablets were buried deliberately along with human remains, suggesting a ritual significance. Were they meant to accompany the dead into an afterlife, carrying messages or protection? Or were they part of a repository of knowledge, intended to be preserved for those who came after? The small size and careful etching imply importance, a deliberate effort to record and safeguard meaning. What makes Tărtăria especially compelling is the possibility that it connects to other pre-flood memories scattered across the globe. Like the submerged lands of Sundaland or the antediluvian cities of Mesopotamia, these tablets hint at advanced thought in a distant past, at communities capable of symbolic expression and abstract reasoning far earlier than previously assumed. Could these symbols encode a memory of events, rituals, or catastrophes that shaped early human civilization? Might they reflect a world still recovering from geological upheavals or rising waters, long before the great floods of legend? Skeptics caution that interpretation is speculative. Without a Rosetta Stone of sorts, the precise meaning of the Tărtăria signs may never be known. Are they proto-writing, religious symbols, or abstract art? Even their age has been questioned, as the precise stratigraphy of the site was disrupted during excavation. Yet the mystery persists because of what the tablets represent. The faint but powerful echo of a human mind reaching toward permanence, striving to communicate across the expanse of millennia. Interestingly, parallels emerge when we consider other prehistoric symbolic systems. The Vinca culture produced hundreds of figurines, ceramics, and incised stones, all suggesting a sophisticated symbolic tradition. The geometric motifs, spirals, and abstract markings found across southeastern Europe hint at a shared understanding, a network of knowledge perhaps connected to broader prehistoric cultures. Could the Tărtăria tablets be remnants of a lost global memory, fragments of a civilization that existed before the flood reshaped human history? As we visualize these small clay tablets, once buried beneath soil and time, questions abound. Were they simple records, sacred texts, or a bridge to knowledge long forgotten? What stories did they carry? What insights did their makers hope to preserve? And why did these symbols endure while so much else was lost? Could their discovery be the faintest whisper of a pre-flood world, a silent testimony to the ingenuity and consciousness of our distant ancestors? The Tărtăria tablets remain a riddle etched in clay, their meaning concealed by time and circumstance. And yet, even in silence, they speak. To the curiosity, the imagination, and the persistent human desire to understand a world that existed long before our own, hidden beneath layers of history, sediment, and memory. What might still lie undiscovered, waiting to reveal the pre-flood story of humanity? From the clay tablets of Tărtăria, where small symbols whisper of human memory reaching back into the Neolithic, we now shift our gaze to the windswept coasts of northern Europe, to a manuscript whose origins and contents continue to ignite debate, the Oera manuscript. Unlike stone or clay, this artifact is a book, a collection of pages that claims to carry the voice of a civilization lost to time, perhaps even predating the Great Flood. Picture a long, slender book, its pages yellowed with age, the characters inscribed in Frisian script. According to its narrative, the manuscript recounts events from ancient times, stretching from the Antediluvian world through the rise and fall of early Northern European civilizations. It speaks of kings and sages, of cataclysms and migrations, and of a people deeply connected to the cycles of the earth and sea. There is a rhythm to its words, a cadence that suggests careful preservation over generations, as though each line was written to survive calamity and remember a vanished age. The Oera Linda manuscript came to light in the 19th century, reportedly discovered in a hidden chest in Friesland, the northernmost province of the Netherlands. Its pages, written in Old Frisian, describe a society of advanced maritime culture, capable of remarkable feats of navigation, agriculture, and governance. The text details floods, celestial events, and wars, blending history with what some interpret as myth or prophecy. If taken at face value, it suggests a continuity of knowledge extending back to an antediluvian epoch, an age when humanity was closely guided by both natural and divine law. Mainstream scholars have long treated the manuscript with suspicion. Many consider it a 19th century fabrication, citing linguistic anachronisms and historical inconsistencies. Some argue that the manuscript was the creation of one or more authors who sought to craft a mythical history for political or cultural purposes. And yet, even critics admit that certain elements, maritime terminology, geographical references, and astronomical descriptions, seem unexpectedly precise, hinting at a possible basis in older oral traditions. Could these fragments preserve memories of a much earlier reality, distorted through centuries of transmission? The manuscript itself describes catastrophic floods that reshaped the coastlines of northern Europe, submerging lands and displacing peoples. These passages resonate eerily with other pre-flood mysteries we have explored, from Sundaland's sunken plains to the buried cities of Mesopotamia. Could the Oera Linda manuscript be a northern echo of the same global cataclysm, preserved in narrative form by a culture determined to remember? Its warnings about human hubris, environmental change, and societal collapse seem to transcend time, as if the authors understood not only the fragility of civilization, but the enduring power of memory itself. Speculative interpretations deepen the mystery. Some researchers propose that the manuscript encodes knowledge from antediluvian seafarers, perhaps survivors of early flood events who carried wisdom across oceans and generations. Others suggest it might preserve the collective memory of a highly advanced pre-flood society, much like the legendary Pillars of Enoch or the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. The emphasis on astronomy, seasonal cycles, and moral law in the text raises questions. Were these instructions meant for survival, guidance, or initiation into hidden knowledge? The manuscript also contains cryptic genealogies and lists of rulers said to span thousands of years, paralleling the antediluvian king lists of Mesopotamia. Some of these names, though foreign to modern readers, hint at a continuity of knowledge and culture predating written history as we understand it. Could the Oera Linda manuscript, in its obscure Frisian script, be a northern repository of the same pre-flood memory recorded in texts from Mesopotamia, Egypt, and even Tărtăria? Even today, the manuscript invites cautious exploration. Scholars, historians, and enthusiasts debate its authenticity, but few can deny the fascination it inspires. There is a haunting quality to the text, a sense of voices speaking across the centuries from a world lost beneath the waves and sands. Its descriptions of floods, migrations, and human endeavor connect it to a broader narrative of pre-flood mystery, a narrative that spans continents and millennia. As we imagine the manuscript's pages, worn and fragile, the mind cannot help but linger on the questions it raises. What truths, if any, were preserved in the Oera Linda manuscript? Were its authors chronicling real events or shaping allegories rooted in the distant memory of disasters long forgotten? And if it contains echoes of a pre-flood civilization, how much of that knowledge remains buried, waiting for discovery beneath layers of history, myth, and sediment? The Oera Linda manuscript remains a tantalizing enigma, straddling the line between history and legend. Its words continue to whisper across time, hinting at a northern world lost to floods and forgotten ages. And as we turn its metaphorical pages in imagination, the question persists. What other voices, stories, or records of the pre-flood world might still lie hidden, waiting to reveal the secrets of a civilization that came before us? From the windswept shores of northern Europe, where the Oera manuscript whispers of floods and vanished civilizations, our exploration now turns skyward, beyond Earth itself, to a cosmic event that may have shaped the very conditions of life and myth on our planet: the Vela supernova connection. Imagine a night sky millions of years ago, vast and silent, with constellations glowing faintly against the void. Somewhere in the southern celestial hemisphere, a massive star reached the end of its life, its core collapsing in an immense explosion, a supernova of unimaginable energy. The light from this cataclysm, though distant, would have rippled across space, bathing the nascent solar system in radiation, triggering changes that might have influenced climates, magnetic fields, and even biological evolution on Earth. Today, the remnants of this event linger in the Vela constellation, a diffuse cloud of gas and dust, faintly glowing as a cosmic monument to a death and rebirth on a stellar scale. Scientists have determined that the Vela supernova occurred approximately 12,000 years ago, intriguingly close to the timing of many pre-flood myths and geological upheavals recorded in human history. Could there be a connection between this celestial event and the cataclysmic floods, tsunamis, and abrupt climate shifts that appear in global legends? Ice cores, sediment layers, and geological studies suggest that around this period, the Earth experienced rapid changes, including widespread flooding, temperature fluctuations, and unusual atmospheric phenomena. Was the Vela supernova a catalyst, a cosmic trigger that left both physical and cultural imprints on our planet? Astronomical observations show the supernova's remnants as intricate filaments of gas, expanding over light years, composed of elements forged in the dying star. These heavy elements, iron, calcium, and more, are essential to life on Earth. In a sense, every star's death is also a gift, seeding the cosmos with the building blocks for planets, oceans, and living organisms. Could it be that the Vela supernova, in its final brilliant burst, influenced not only the chemical makeup of Earth but also the timing of the environmental upheavals that became embedded in human memory as stories of great floods? The idea of a celestial influence on human history is not new. Cultures across the globe have recorded unusual lights in the sky, fiery omens, and comets, sometimes interpreted as divine intervention. Could the progenitors of flood myths, from Mesopotamia to Sundaland, have witnessed or inherited stories of the consequences of cosmic events like Vela? Might the flash of a supernova, though imperceptible to most, have altered Earth's atmosphere enough to trigger storms, tidal surges, or climatic anomalies that became immortalized in myth? Mainstream astronomy provides explanations rooted in physics. Supernovae release tremendous amounts of energy, including gamma rays, X-rays, and neutrinos, but Earth, at vast distances, would have been largely shielded. Yet even minor increases in radiation could influence cloud formation, ozone concentrations, and climate patterns. Some researchers argue that certain anomalies in ice cores and tree ring data from the late glacial period may correlate with supernova events, including Vela. While evidence is circumstantial, the possibility that cosmic forces and terrestrial catastrophes intersected is tantalizing. Speculative theories take this further. Could a supernova's energetic output have caused localized flooding or even triggered geological instability, perhaps exacerbating the destruction of coastal settlements and civilizations? Some have proposed that collective memory of these events, transmitted orally across generations, may have shaped the archetypal flood stories we find embedded in texts from Palestine, Mesopotamia, and beyond? If so, the stars themselves become silent witnesses, their violent deaths woven into human history and myth. Yet questions remain. How much of human pre-flood experience was shaped by cosmic events beyond comprehension, and how much by terrestrial forces alone? Could the timing of Vela, Sundaland Submergence, and the rising seas described in the lost book of Jasher, the Oera Manuscript, or other chronicles be more than coincidence? Were humans recording, consciously or unconsciously, the interplay between sky and sea, a dance of forces that shaped survival, culture, and storytelling? As we contemplate the Vela supernova's faint remnants, glowing silently in the southern sky, there is a profound sense of connection across scales of time and space. The explosion of a distant star, the submergence of continents, the rise of ancient cities, and the survival of human memory all converge, suggesting a world where the cosmos and civilization are intertwined. Each remnant, each symbol, and each story carries a trace of a reality that may forever remain partially hidden. The Vela supernova connection compels us to consider the fragile interplay between Earth and the wider universe, between human memory and cosmic events. Could the light of a dying star, traveling thousands of light years, have left echoes in our myths, our climate, and our collective consciousness? And if so, what other celestial phenomena, hidden in the depths of time and space, might have shaped the pre-flood world in ways we are only beginning to imagine? From the distant echoes of cosmic events, like the Vela supernova, where celestial forces may have touched Earth in ways we are only beginning to understand, we now turn to a symbol that bridges sky and soil, myth and memory, the world tree. Across continents and cultures, stories emerge of a colossal tree, Yggdrasil, Irminsul, or the Axis Mundi, that binds heaven, earth, and the underworld. And in many of these traditions, there is a striking motif: the collapse, destruction, or weakening of this cosmic tree, an event that presages chaos, floods, or the unraveling of the natural order. Imagine the primeval forest, vast and silent, where the largest trees stretch beyond imagination, their branches seeming to touch the clouds. Beneath them, rivers wind through untouched valleys, and life thrives in abundance. In myth, this tree is more than flora. It is the structural spine of the world, the channel through which cosmic energies flow, linking the heavens to the earth and the depths below. And then, in the stories, it falters. Its roots twist, its trunk shudders, and its fall triggers upheaval, storms, and deluge. Anthropologists and historians have long noted the recurrence of this motif. From Norse sagas of Yggdrasil shaking before Ragnarok, to Siberian and Central Asian accounts of immense sacred trees struck by lightning or felled by great winds, to Mesopotamian depictions of trees uprooted during floods, the symbol of the world tree resonates across pre-flood narratives. Could these myths encode memories of real ecological disasters, megafloods, cyclones, or seismic events that ancient peoples witnessed and preserved through allegory? Mainstream interpretations often regard these tales as metaphorical. The tree's fall represents the collapse of cosmic or societal order, a story device to convey lessons about morality, fate, and human vulnerability. Yet some researchers propose a deeper reading, one that blends natural history with myth. Large trees are extraordinarily sensitive to climate, soil changes, and seismic shifts. In regions prone to earthquakes, volcanic activity, or rising seas, entire forests could have been felled suddenly, their destruction witnessed by early humans. Could such dramatic events have inspired stories of a cosmic tree collapsing, a literal reflection of environmental catastrophe woven into sacred symbolism? The timing of these myths is particularly compelling when considered alongside other pre-flood mysteries. Geological evidence indicates that at the end of the last ice age, approximately 12,000 to 10,000 years ago, Earth experienced dramatic climate shifts, melting ice sheets, and rising sea levels. Coastal forests would have drowned, river valleys could have been swept away, and massive storms may have toppled ancient trees. Might the world tree myths, preserved in oral tradition and later texts, be humanity's way of encoding the memory of ecological collapse on a scale that dwarfs ordinary natural disasters? Some speculative theories extend even further. Could the world tree's fall reflect knowledge of a cataclysmic global event, a collision, massive flood, or series of environmental shocks that coincided with other pre-flood phenomena we have explored, from Sundaland's submergence to the Burckle crater event in the Indian Ocean? Might the symbolic trunk of the world mirror the axis of stability for human civilizations, and its collapse the moment when long-standing orders, geological, cultural, and societal, were irrevocably disrupted? Archaeological findings add another layer to the mystery. In some northern European sites, post-glacial deposits reveal forests violently toppled, buried under sediment, sometimes near settlements of early humans. In Mesoamerica, flood layers coincide with sudden vegetation shifts. Could these physical traces be the factual underpinning of myths describing the world tree's collapse? Did ancient peoples witness the literal toppling of massive forests, interpreting these events through the lens of cosmology and spirituality, embedding them into stories that survive to this day? The metaphorical and literal intertwine. The tree is not just a symbol of life. It is an archive of memory, a witness to planetary upheaval. In myths, its fall is accompanied by floods, darkness, and migration, motifs that echo those found in Mesopotamian and Palestinian flood narratives, in the tales preserved by the Oera Manuscript, and in the submerged cities of Sundaland. Could all these threads, scattered across continents, point to a shared memory of a world altered by sudden and violent forces? As we picture the ancient forests, the colossal world tree bending under forces beyond comprehension, a sense of scale and wonder emerges. How did early humans interpret these events? How much did their stories preserve real environmental catastrophes? And how much did they elevate them into sacred allegory? And if these myths are indeed memories of actual upheavals, what other lessons, warnings, or insights might they contain, lost beneath layers of oral tradition and time? The world tree collapse myths remain an enigma, a bridge between nature, myth, and memory. They invite us to consider that the stories of our ancestors, even when cloaked in symbolism, may carry glimpses of real events, echoes of pre-flood catastrophes that shaped landscapes, ecosystems, and civilizations alike. And as we ponder these ancient tales, one question lingers. What other truths lie hidden in the myths, waiting to reveal the reality behind the collapse of a world long lost? From the echoes of ancient forests and the collapse of the world tree, where myth and memory intertwine to record cataclysms that shaped early humanity, we now move to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, where one of the most compelling pre-flood narratives emerges, the story of Utnapishtim. Preserved within the Epic of Gilgamesh, this tale is perhaps the closest literary parallel to the global flood myths, offering both vivid imagery and haunting questions about the events that may have inspired it. Imagine the rivers of Sumer and Akkad, wide and shimmering under the early morning sun, their currents bringing life to vast swaths of land. In this fertile cradle, cities of mud brick rise along the banks of the Euphrates and Tigris, and humanity records its history on clay tablets. It is here that Utnapishtim's story unfolds, a man chosen by the gods to survive a catastrophic flood that will cleanse the earth. Ordered to build a massive boat, he preserves his family, animals, and knowledge, riding out a deluge so immense it submerges mountains and erases civilizations. The tale is rich with symbolism, yet its narrative is precise, almost clinical in its attention to the logistics of survival and the aftermath of destruction. Historians recognize the Epic of Gilgamesh as a product of the early 2nd millennium BC, yet many elements hint at memories far older, possibly transmitted orally for millennia. The story's details, divine warnings, boat construction, survival of life, and eventual disembarkation on a mountain, parallel accounts from other regions, the biblical Noah, the Hindu Manu, and flood legends across Africa, Asia, and the Americas. Could these stories, emerging independently yet sharing astonishingly similar motifs, be preserving memories of a single global or regional cataclysm that occurred at the end of the last ice age? Archaeological and geological evidence lends weight to this possibility. The Mesopotamian floodplain is rich in alluvial deposits, revealing layers of silt and sediment consistent with sudden massive flooding events. Some researchers suggest that localized but devastating inundations along the Tigris and Euphrates, possibly triggered by rising seas, melting glaciers, or even a comet impact, may have been the historical kernels around which these narratives crystallized. Could Utnapishtim's flood, immortalized in clay, reflect both a literal catastrophe and a symbolic memory of ancient humanity grappling with forces beyond comprehension? Speculative interpretations push the mystery even further. The precision with which Utnapishtim builds his vessel, preserves species, and survives the deluge may indicate knowledge of advanced engineering or environmental understanding lost to time. Some suggest that these myths encode warnings about cycles of disaster, hints of a collective consciousness attuned to recurring cosmic or climatic events. Others propose that the story preserves an awareness of rising sea levels, tidal surges, or global shifts, events so catastrophic that they reshaped cultures and consciousness itself. The Utnapishtim narrative also resonates with other pre-flood phenomena we have explored. The submerged cities of Sundaland, the Antediluvian king lists, and the collapse of sacred forests all suggest a world suddenly and violently altered. In each instance, survival demanded knowledge, adaptation, and memory. Could the tale of Utnapishtim be a Mesopotamian echo of these broader patterns, a record of survival encoded in myth to guide future generations? Yet, questions remain as elusive as the clay tablets themselves. Was Utnapishtim a historical figure whose experiences became mythologized or entirely symbolic, representing the collective human memory of disaster and renewal? Did the authors of the epic draw from multiple sources, floods in Palestine, coastal submergences in Sundaland, cosmic events like the Vela supernova, or was the narrative a purely literary construction shaped by imagination and cultural symbolism? The line between history and legend blurs, leaving only fragments for us to interpret. As we envision Utnapishtim standing upon the deck of his vessel, watching the waters recede and the mountains re-emerge, a sense of scale emerges that transcends human experience. Here is a man, or perhaps a memory of many men and women, bearing witness to the fragility of civilization and the persistence of knowledge. The narrative connects humanity to forces far beyond its control: the wrath of gods, the surge of rivers, and the slow but inexorable transformation of the planet. The story of Utnapishtim invites us to ponder the interplay between myth and memory, catastrophe and survival. Across time and geography, from Mesopotamia to Sundaland, from sacred trees to celestial explosions, humans have sought to record, warn, and preserve knowledge of events that forever altered the course of history. And as we trace these threads, one question lingers. What truths about the pre-flood world have been hidden within these stories, waiting for those who dare to read between the lines and listen to the echoes of a vanished age? The story of Utnapishtim invites us to ponder the interplay between myth and memory, catastrophe and survival. Across time and geography, from Mesopotamia to Sundaland, from sacred trees to celestial explosions, humans have sought to record, warn, and preserve knowledge of events that forever altered the course of history. And as we trace these threads, one question lingers. What truths about the pre-flood world have been hidden within these stories, waiting for those who dare to read between the lines and listen to the echoes of a vanished age? The Sundial of Sippar invites reflection on the interplay between human observation, environmental change, and the preservation of knowledge. It asks us to consider the possibility that pre-flood societies, facing catastrophic events, may have developed ways to measure, predict, and adapt to their world. Ways encoded in instruments, myths, and texts that survive to this day. And as we follow the shadow across its ancient face, one question lingers. What other secrets of time, disaster, and survival might remain hidden, waiting to be uncovered in the artifacts and stories of a world lost to the floods? From the quiet precision of Sippar's sundial, where the movement of shadows once guided human activity and preserved cosmic knowledge, we turn now to the sprawling plains of ancient Mesopotamia, where legend and archaeology intersect in the stories of the 7 Sumerian pre-flood cities. These cities, spoken of in Sumerian king lists and preserved in clay tablets, occupy a space between history and myth, a tantalizing glimpse into a world that may have vanished beneath waters long ago. Picture the fertile plains of southern Mesopotamia, bathed in the amber light of dawn. Rivers wind lazily across the landscape, nourishing reeds and marshes, while mud-brick settlements rise in geometric patterns, their walls reflecting the early sun. Here, the ancients built monumental temples, administrative centers, and bustling marketplaces, structures designed not only for survival, but for the preservation of knowledge and culture. According to Sumerian tradition, 7 such cities existed before the Great Flood: Eridu, Bad Tibira, Larak, Sippar, Shurupak, and others whose names are whispered in fragments across surviving texts. Each was ruled by kings who, according to legend, reigned for astonishingly long periods, thousands of years in some accounts, hinting at a reality that defies conventional chronology. Archaeology provides glimpses of truth beneath the myth. Excavations at Eridu reveal layers of settlement stretching back to 5400 BC, suggesting continuous habitation and impressive urban development for the time. Temples and ziggurats stand as evidence of organized religion, complex administration, and an awareness of celestial patterns. Yet the durations of reigns recorded in king lists are extraordinary, far exceeding natural human lifespans. Were these symbolic measures of dynastic power, or could they hint at a lost understanding of time, perhaps a reflection of pre-flood longevity or altered environmental conditions? The cities themselves, often described as centers of learning, trade, and spiritual authority, are intertwined with the narratives of divine favor and judgment. Sumerian texts speak of kings receiving knowledge directly from the gods, craftsmanship, irrigation techniques, and the secrets of astronomy. Could these accounts preserve fragments of a pre-flood civilization whose achievements were erased or submerged, leaving only traces in memory and myth? How much of their engineering, agriculture, and culture might have been inherited by post-flood societies, forming the foundation for what we now recognize as early Mesopotamian civilization? Some researchers propose that the longevity of the kings, the scale of the cities, and the sophistication of their architecture suggest influences or knowledge lost in the flood itself. Could these cities have been part of a network, a connected civilization spanning rivers, plains, and possibly coastal regions, sharing technology and culture across vast distances? Might the catastrophic floods, evidenced by sediment layers and alluvial deposits, have swept away much of this knowledge, leaving only fragments preserved in tablets, myths, and oral traditions? Speculative theories extend even further. Some suggest that these pre-flood cities may have been aware of environmental cycles, rising seas, or tectonic activity, knowledge encoded in city planning, temple orientation, and agricultural timing. Could the placement of these cities along rivers reflect an understanding of water management and flood mitigation that predates the deluge itself? And if so, how much of this knowledge was lost when the waters rose, and how much was preserved in stories of survival, like the Utnapishtim narrative or the myths of the World Tree? The 7 Sumerian pre-flood cities also invite reflection on human resilience and adaptation. Their ruins remind us that civilization is fragile, yet capable of extraordinary innovation. They speak of a time when humans sought to harmonize with natural and cosmic forces, measuring time with sundials, observing stars, and building monumental structures that mirrored their understanding of the heavens. Could the legacy of these cities, now submerged or scattered, have influenced other cultures across the ancient world, connecting Mesopotamia to distant lands like Sundaland or the banks of the Nile in Palestine? As we trace the remnants of mud brick walls, temple foundations, and ancient canals, a sense of wonder emerges. The 7 cities are more than archaeological sites. They are symbols of memory, ambition, and mystery. They ask us to consider the possibility that the pre-flood world was far more sophisticated than conventional history allows. A civilization whose knowledge, rituals, and urban design were erased by cataclysm yet preserved in myth. The stories of these cities challenge our understanding of time, history, and survival. Were they real, their grandeur literal, or were they magnified by the lens of memory and storytelling? And if the flood truly reshaped the world, what secrets of urban planning, astronomy, and governance were lost beneath the waters? As we contemplate the 7 Sumerian pre-flood cities, one question lingers. What other truths of a vanished civilization remain hidden, waiting to be rediscovered in the layers of earth, clay, and myth that continue to whisper across millennia? From the ancient plains of Mesopotamia and the storied 7 Sumerian pre-flood cities, where kings reigned for millennia and knowledge was preserved in clay and myth, our exploration now spans continents to the high altitudes of the Andes, to a place that seems almost suspended between sky and water, Lake Titicaca. Nestled on the border of modern-day Peru and Bolivia, it is the largest lake in South America, a vast expanse of shimmering blue cradled by snow-capped peaks. Yet beneath its tranquil surface lies a rich tapestry of legend, hinting at floods, divine interventions, and civilizations lost to time. Imagine the early morning mist curling across the lake, the wind whispering through the reeds along its shores. Fishermen in reed boats glide silently across the glassy surface, their movements mirrored perfectly in the still waters. To the local Aymara and Quechua peoples, Lake Titicaca has always been more than a body of water. It is sacred, a source of life, and a repository of stories reaching back into prehistory. Among these stories are flood legends that echo the universal motifs we have encountered in Mesopotamia, Sundaland, and beyond. Tales speak of waters rising, of lands submerged, and of survivors who, guided by divine wisdom, repopulated the earth. Anthropologists and folklorists have long recorded these narratives, noting their striking parallels to other pre-flood myths. The lake itself, perched over 3,800 meters above sea level, contains islands said to have been refuges for the first human beings after a great deluge. The Uros Islands, constructed from totora reeds, may even be remnants of ancient survival strategies adapted to rising waters. Could these legends be collective memories of glacial melt, sudden storms, or catastrophic floods that reshaped the Andean highlands thousands of years ago? Geological studies provide tantalizing clues. Lake Titicaca is known to have undergone significant changes during the late Pleistocene, including fluctuations in water level caused by glacial cycles. Some researchers propose that ancient peoples witnessed dramatic rises and falls of the lake, events that could have been recorded in oral traditions as catastrophic floods. Could the mythic accounts of divine intervention and the survival of select individuals or families reflect an encoded memory of these environmental upheavals, preserved across generations through storytelling? The legends also describe mountains emerging from the waters, echoing motifs found across the globe, from Mesopotamian flood narratives to the world tree myths of northern cultures. In these tales, the survivors do not merely escape the water. They re-establish order, cultivate the land, and transmit knowledge. Could such stories indicate that early Andean civilizations, like their counterparts in Mesopotamia, were acutely aware of their environment's fragility and the cyclical forces shaping it? Might they have preserved pre-flood knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, or hydrology, encoded in legend and ritual? Some speculative interpretations suggest even deeper connections. The flood myths of Lake Titicaca, with their emphasis on survival, divine guidance, and the emergence of human civilization from water, parallel not only Mesopotamian accounts but also narratives from Sundaland, the Yucatan, and other distant regions. Could these myths hint at a shared memory of global or widespread cataclysmic events, transmitted independently by cultures separated by thousands of kilometers and generations? Is it possible that the Andean highlands, though isolated by altitude and terrain, preserved an echo of the same ancient catastrophes that shaped early human civilizations elsewhere? Archaeological evidence adds another layer to the mystery. Underwater explorations have revealed submerged terraces and structures along the lake's edges, suggesting that human habitation adapted to changing water levels. If these ruins are indeed remnants of early settlement, they could corroborate legends of a great flood that transformed the landscape. How much of these stories reflect historical events, and how much are symbolic, woven into ritual and belief to convey human resilience in the face of natural forces? As we envision the high-altitude waters of Lake Titicaca, with its islands rising like mirages above the surface, a profound sense of continuity emerges. Here is a place where myth, memory, and the physical landscape converge, where the echoes of pre-flood events resonate across centuries. The lake's legends remind us that humans have always sought to interpret, survive, and record catastrophic events through ritual, architecture, and story. The flood myths of Lake Titicaca invite us to reflect on the universality of human experience and the fragility of civilization in the face of nature's forces. They challenge us to consider that, long before written history, people bore witness to cataclysmic floods and recorded their lessons in tales that still captivate and mystify. And as we gaze upon the serene surface of the lake, one question lingers. What other truths about pre-flood civilizations, hidden beneath these waters or encoded in their legends, remain waiting to be discovered, whispering across millennia? From the misty waters of Lake Titicaca, where flood legends ripple through time, we now lift our gaze to the heavens, turning from terrestrial deluges to celestial mysteries, the enigmatic accounts of a second sun recorded in myths, ancient texts, and folklore across the globe. These stories, often brief yet vivid, describe a luminous companion in the sky, sometimes appearing as a twin to our sun, casting light and shadow in ways that defy ordinary observation. Imagine a prehistoric landscape, dawn breaking over plains, rivers, and settlements. Suddenly, the sky ignites with an extraordinary phenomenon. A second orb glows, hovering near the familiar sun, bathing the land in an unusual radiance. Crops, rivers, and mountains are cast in unfamiliar shadows. The air seems charged with an unspoken warning. Witnesses, shamans, priests, or simply the people of the day, record these moments in oral tradition, petroglyphs, and later in writing, conveying awe, fear, and wonder. Could these accounts describe a genuine astronomical event, a fleeting celestial alignment, or perhaps a planet temporarily visible due to extreme cosmic circumstances? Historical records offer intriguing glimpses. Ancient Chinese, Hindu, and Mesoamerican texts all reference dual suns or unusual solar phenomena. In some accounts, a second sun appears before catastrophic events, floods, droughts, or societal upheaval. European petroglyphs depict twin solar disks rising above human figures, while Babylonian texts describe fiery omens in the heavens. Mainstream explanations often attribute these observations to atmospheric optical effects, sundogs, reflections, or rare atmospheric refractions. Yet the consistency and antiquity of these accounts across continents raise questions. Could there have been a shared memory of a cosmic event, imprinted on human consciousness long before modern astronomy? Some researchers suggest that the second sun myths may be linked to celestial phenomena such as supernovae, cometary encounters, or even planetary alignments. The Vela supernova, for instance, is a candidate for influencing early myths, its explosive energy visible from Earth tens of thousands of years ago. Could such cosmic events have been interpreted as twin suns, their brief brilliance seared into myth and ritual? Did ancient observers, attuned to celestial patterns for agriculture and survival, record what we now struggle to explain? The myths are not purely symbolic. In some narratives, the second sun is described as a source of danger or transformation. Its arrival signals chaos, floods, or fires, suggesting an awareness that astronomical phenomena can affect earthly conditions. Could these stories be more than allegory, encoding observations of meteor impacts, extreme solar flares, or other cosmic disturbances? And if so, might they connect to the floods and catastrophes we have traced from Mesopotamia to Lake Titicaca, hinting at an underlying pattern of celestial and terrestrial upheaval? Speculative interpretations extend even further. Some theorists propose that the second sun might have been a yet undiscovered companion to our solar system, a transient object, a rogue planet, or a binary star visible for brief periods. While mainstream astronomy finds no current evidence of such a companion, the consistency of myths across cultures invites curiosity. Could ancient humans have witnessed phenomena now erased by time and cosmic dynamics, preserving fragments of a reality we are only beginning to imagine? The tales also speak to the human need to interpret and survive extreme events. Witnessing a second sun would have been profoundly disorienting, altering perceptions of time, climate, and seasonal patterns. Civilizations, particularly those relying on precise solar observations for agriculture and ritual, would have struggled to comprehend the implications. Could these myths, like the sundials of Sippar or the astronomical knowledge of the 7 Sumerian pre-flood cities, represent an effort to reconcile human life with forces far greater than themselves? As we trace these ancient accounts across continents, from the Andes to Mesopotamia, from Europe to Asia, a pattern emerges. Humanity has long observed the sky for signs, warnings, and knowledge. The second sun myths may be among the most mysterious of these observations, tantalizing fragments of events so rare, so extraordinary, that they linger only in memory, legend, and symbol. And so, as we lift our gaze toward the heavens, contemplating the possibility of twin suns and cosmic visitors, we are reminded of the fragile boundary between observation and interpretation, between history and myth. Were these phenomena actual events recorded by vigilant observers, or symbolic expressions of fear and reverence for the forces shaping their world? And most profoundly, could the stories of a second sun hold keys to understanding pre-flood catastrophes, linking celestial upheaval with the floods, submergences, and collapses we have traced across the globe? The mystery remains, suspended like a twin sun on the horizon of human memory, waiting for those who dare to wonder. From the celestial wonders hinted at in the second sun myths, our exploration descends once more to Earth, tracing the ripple of flood narratives across continents to the high plateaus of the Andes, where Viracocha, the great Andean deity, emerges as both creator and destroyer. Lake-filled valleys stretch beneath snow-capped peaks, mist rising from ancient riverbeds, and the wind carrying whispers of a time when the world was reshaped by water and divine will. Here, the Viracocha flood story has endured for millennia, a tale of cosmic judgment, survival, and renewal. Picture the sun rising over the Altiplano, illuminating the jagged peaks that cradle the sacred lakes. Villagers tend fields and herds, yet in their stories, they remember a distant age when Viracocha walked among men. According to legend, the deity, dismayed by the corruption and ignorance of humankind, sent a catastrophic flood to cleanse the land. Waters rose, submerging mountains and plains, forcing survivors to seek refuge on high ground or in the hollowed vessels crafted under divine guidance. From the narrative emerges a pattern familiar across pre-flood myths: humanity warned, humanity preserved, and humanity reborn. Archaeological and geological studies lend intriguing context. The Andean highlands have experienced significant hydrological and climatic shifts over millennia, including glacial melt, sudden lake overflows, and extreme rainfall. These environmental changes could have inspired, or been encoded into, the Viracocha flood story. Terraced landscapes, raised ceremonial platforms, and stone-lined channels hint at societies acutely aware of water management, prepared for fluctuations in rivers and lakes that could become devastating. Could the Viracocha flood story preserve collective memory of these events, transmitted through generations as both myth and practical guidance? Yet the legend extends beyond the material. Viracocha is described as emerging from Lake Titicaca, the primordial waters, bringing knowledge, culture, and order to humanity after the Deluge. This portrayal resonates with broader pre-flood narratives worldwide, from Mesopotamian accounts of Utnapishtim to the survivors of Sundaland. In each case, water is both destructive and creative, a force of judgment that simultaneously tests and transforms human civilization. Could such myths reflect an intuitive understanding of cycles, of catastrophe and renewal that ancient societies observed and recorded in story, architecture, and ritual? The narrative grows more enigmatic in its details. Viracocha, in some accounts, instructed survivors in agriculture, astronomy, and social organization, imparting wisdom that enabled post-flood civilizations to thrive. Is this a symbolic illustration of knowledge preservation, or could it hint at actual transmissions of pre-flood technologies and understanding, encoded into ritual and oral tradition? And if so, might these Andean teachings be connected to other flood narratives across the globe, suggesting a shared memory of pre-flood knowledge lost to time and water? Speculative interpretations invite deeper consideration. Some theorists suggest that the Viracocha flood may correspond to a specific environmental event, perhaps a massive glacial lake outburst or sudden tectonic shift that triggered widespread inundation in the high Andes. Others propose a more symbolic reading, interpreting Viracocha as an embodiment of natural forces, with floods representing planetary or cosmic cycles, warning humans of periodic catastrophes. Could it be that these legends, like those of Lake Titicaca and the 7 Sumerian pre-flood cities, encode ancient observations of climate, geology, and even astronomical phenomena, observations whose meanings have been partially obscured over thousands of years? The Andean flood story also illustrates the relationship between humans and landscape. The high plateaus, volcanic peaks, and sacred lakes of the Andes are more than settings. They are participants in the myth. They shape how water flows, how communities adapt, and how stories evolve. The persistence of the Viracocha narrative suggests that memory of catastrophic events was deeply intertwined with the natural environment, embedding warnings and guidance within the collective consciousness of generations. As we envision the waters rising across the Andean highlands, swallowing valleys, and sparing only those who followed divine instruction or retreated to higher ground, a reflection emerges. These stories are not merely tales of destruction, but of resilience, adaptation, and the enduring human effort to understand forces far beyond control. The Viracocha flood narrative bridges natural observation, spiritual interpretation, and cultural continuity, much like the flood myths of Mesopotamia, Sundaland, and Titicaca. And so, standing at the shores of an Andean lake or gazing across misted valleys, one cannot help but wonder, did the ancient peoples who told of Viracocha witness an actual deluge, or is it a symbolic record of recurrent catastrophes woven into their consciousness? Could the waters of the high Andes have preserved the memory of pre-flood events that shaped human civilization long before recorded history? The mystery endures, leaving us to ponder what remnants of lost knowledge, hidden beneath mountain lakes and carried in legend, remain waiting to be rediscovered. From the misted heights of the Andes and the sacred waters of Lake Titicaca, our journey now turns across oceans toward the fabled sunken city of Atlantis, where myths speak not only of floods and cataclysms, but of a civilization imbued with knowledge so profound that it may have harnessed the very forces of nature itself. Central to these tales are the legendary Atlantean Crystals, enigmatic objects said to have been instruments of energy, illumination, and perhaps even consciousness. Imagine the city of Atlantis at its zenith, sprawling across fertile plains and azure bays. Palaces, temples, and streets gleam under the sun, while massive crystal formations shimmer atop towers or embedded within sacred structures. These crystals, according to accounts preserved by Plato and expanded in later traditions, were far more than decorative. They emitted light without flame, amplified sound and communication, and in some interpretations, stored knowledge or consciousness. Travelers and scholars have long debated whether these descriptions are allegorical or whether they preserve echoes of advanced technology now lost beneath the ocean. Historical texts offer tantalizing, if ambiguous, hints. Plato's dialogues mention temples and sanctuaries adorned with materials that glowed and pulsed with unusual energy. In Mesoamerican and Andean traditions, sacred stones and crystals were attributed with protective and communicative properties, sometimes described as recording the past or connecting with divine forces. Could there be a thread linking these distant cultures, a shared memory of crystalline technology, or the symbolic representation of energy and knowledge preserved through myth? Modern explorations have uncovered naturally occurring crystals used in ancient societies, from quartz in Mesopotamia to obsidian and selenite in Mesoamerica. These materials, often carved and polished, served ritual and practical purposes, including magnification, signaling, or even primitive energy conduction. Could the Atlantean crystals have been an extension of these practices, enhanced, engineered, or understood in ways we can scarcely imagine today? Some speculative researchers propose that the Atlanteans may have discovered methods to harness piezoelectric or luminescent properties, using crystals to illuminate spaces, amplify sound, or store information. The legends grow more mysterious in their details. Atlantean texts describe crystals resonating in harmony with human intention, producing effects that border on telepathy or clairvoyance. Were these descriptions metaphors for heightened awareness and meditation, or were they accounts of phenomena lost to time? techniques that allowed humans to interface with energy in ways that modern science has only begun to explore? Some suggest that the catastrophic submergence of Atlantis may have buried not only cities and knowledge, but also experimental technologies, encoded in myth and scattered across distant continents through oral tradition. Geological and oceanographic studies provide another layer to consider. Large natural crystal formations exist in certain regions, including underwater caves and tectonic fracture zones. It is conceivable that Atlantean builders incorporated these crystals into structures in ways that augmented natural energy or reflected sunlight to illuminate interiors. Could these constructions, combining environmental understanding with advanced materials, explain the extraordinary descriptions preserved in legend? And if so, might traces of such knowledge still linger beneath the seas, waiting to be discovered by careful investigation? The myth of Atlantean crystals also intersects with broader pre-flood narratives. In the same way that Viracocha guided survivors of Andean floods, or the Sundial of Sippar encoded celestial knowledge, Atlantean crystals are said to have been instruments of guidance, protection, and continuity. They may have served as repositories of wisdom, ensuring that knowledge of pre-cataclysmic civilizations could survive even when cities themselves were lost beneath water and silt. Could it be that these crystals, whether literal or symbolic, represent humanity's persistent attempt to preserve and transmit understanding in the face of planetary upheaval? As we envision the Atlantean halls and sanctuaries, glittering with crystalline light, a profound sense of wonder emerges. These objects, whether historical, allegorical, or speculative, speak to the human desire to harness the unseen, to interact with forces beyond ordinary perception, and to leave a legacy capable of bridging time, catastrophe, and culture. And so, as we imagine the sun setting over a city now lost beneath the ocean waves, one cannot help but ask, were the Atlantean crystals real instruments of energy and knowledge, or are they symbolic reflections of a civilization's profound understanding of nature and consciousness? Could remnants of this knowledge, hidden in the depths or encoded in distant myths, await rediscovery, offering insight into pre-flood civilizations and the mysteries of human ingenuity long obscured by time? The enigma endures, shimmering like crystal beneath the waves, inviting us to wonder what lies still buried in the forgotten corners of our world. From the sunken mysteries of Atlantis and the shimmering Atlantean crystals, our journey now turns northward, beyond temperate lands, toward the icy expanse of the Arctic, where legends speak of Hyperborea, a fabled northern kingdom lost to time and inundated by waters that reshaped the northern landscapes. Here, amid snow-laden peaks, frozen seas, and wind-swept tundras, the Hyperborean flood narratives whisper of a civilization both radiant and enigmatic, whose story survives only in fragments, myths, and the echoes of distant chroniclers. Imagine a land bathed in perpetual light during the summer months, where glaciers gleam like crystal cathedrals, and rivers run clear and swift. According to the legends, Hyperborea was a realm of extraordinary longevity and wisdom, inhabited by people attuned to the rhythms of the earth, the sky, and the hidden currents of knowledge. Yet even this seemingly eternal land was not immune to catastrophe. Tales describe a great flood, waters rising from melting glaciers, ocean surges, or perhaps the wrath of celestial forces, submerging cities, sweeping away forests, and forcing the Hyperboreans to flee or perish. Could these stories preserve memory of real environmental upheavals in the Arctic, recorded in myth and passed down across cultures far to the south? Classical sources, including Greek historians and later esoteric texts, describe Hyperborea as a paradise beyond the north wind, inhabited by a people who lived long, healthy lives, communed with divine beings, and mastered knowledge lost to later civilizations. Some accounts hint that Hyperboreans maintained sacred knowledge of cycles, astronomical, seasonal, and possibly even pre-flood events, that was partially transmitted to Mediterranean cultures. Could these legends, in their veiled way, encode observations of ancient climate change, massive ice melt, or rising sea levels in the northern hemisphere? Modern research offers tantalizing hints. Geological and paleoclimatic evidence indicates that, around the end of the last ice age, approximately 12,000 to 10,000 years ago, the Arctic and subarctic regions experienced dramatic shifts. Ice sheets receded, glacial lakes drained catastrophically, and sea levels rose, inundating low-lying areas and reshaping coastlines. Could such events have inspired the Hyperborean flood myths, preserving memory of landscapes now buried beneath Arctic waters or transformed by glacial retreat? The parallels between Hyperborea and other pre-flood traditions, from Atlantis to Sundaland, suggest a recurring human attempt to make sense of vast, destructive forces, linking memory, environment, and survival. The narrative deepens in its details. Hyperborean myths often speak of survivors carrying knowledge, mathematics, astronomy, or esoteric wisdom into distant lands, much as flood survivors elsewhere preserved culture and science. Could these myths reflect an understanding that human knowledge must endure even when civilization itself is threatened by forces beyond comprehension? And if so, might Hyperborea, like Atlantis, be more than a symbol, hinting at actual societies whose traces are now buried under ice, permafrost, or rising seas? Speculative interpretations have long captured the imagination. Some researchers propose that Hyperborea may have been a coastal Arctic civilization, perhaps situated in areas now submerged in the Barents Sea, or along northern Siberian coastlines. Others suggest a symbolic reading, interpreting the floods as representations of cyclical cataclysms, climate fluctuations, or even cosmic events, warning humanity of forces both terrestrial and celestial. Could it be that Hyperborean legends, like the Viracocha flood stories or Atlantean myths, encode practical survival knowledge, astronomical observation, and spiritual insight within the narrative of catastrophe? The legends also emphasize the intimate relationship between people and environment. In Hyperborea, land, ice, and water were intertwined with culture and memory. Rising waters, relentless winds, and shifting glaciers were not abstract forces. They were lived realities, shaping habitation, belief, and storytelling. The flood narrative, therefore, is not merely a tale of loss. It is a testimony to the resilience of human consciousness, the preservation of knowledge, and the enduring need to understand natural and cosmic forces. As we envision the Hyperborean coastlines, once alive with cities and forests now vanished beneath ice and sea, a reflection emerges. The northern floods, like those of Atlantis, Lake Titicaca or Sundaland, remind us that the Earth's history is written not only in stone and sediment, but in human memory, myth, and imagination. Did the Hyperboreans witness a real deluge, or do their legends encode symbolic truths about survival, cycles, and the fragility of civilization? Could traces of this ancient northern wisdom, hidden beneath ice or embedded in stories passed across millennia, still await discovery? The mystery endures, as remote and luminous as the Arctic sun in midsummer, leaving us to wonder what secrets of the pre-flood world might remain concealed in the frozen north, awaiting the careful gaze of those willing to seek them. From the frozen expanses of Hyperborea, our exploration moves southward across oceans and continents to the heart of Mesoamerica, where the Aztec civilization preserved a remarkable and enigmatic understanding of cosmic cycles, their five suns myth, each age marked by creation, destruction, and the inexorable recurrence of catastrophe. Among these cycles, The flood that concluded the era of the fourth sun stands as a chilling prelude to the world we inhabit, a story of water, survival, and transformation that resonates with other pre-flood narratives around the globe. Imagine the Valley of Mexico, ringed by volcanic peaks and dotted with shimmering lakes, the sun rising over temples and pyramids whose stones seem to echo ancient chants. According to Aztec lore, the fourth sun, known as the Sun of Water, ended in devastation. Rain fell for 40 days and nights, rivers and lakes swelled, and the land itself was submerged beneath a deluge. Humanity, in this telling, was swept away or transformed. Some accounts suggest people became fish, others speak of a selective survival through divine intervention. These details, fantastical as they may appear, evoke a recurring motif: the delicate balance between humanity and forces beyond comprehension. Archaeology and geology lend fascinating context. The Valley of Mexico and surrounding highlands are prone to tectonic activity and periodic flooding. Lake deposits, sediment layers, and paleoclimatic records indicate that, in the distant past, the region experienced massive inundations, sudden lake overflows, and violent rainfall events. Could these environmental realities have inspired the Aztec flood cycle? Is it possible that the myth of the fourth sun encodes real memories of catastrophic hydrological events, preserved through oral tradition and ritualized in temple art, codices, and ceremonies? The symbolism of the five suns extends beyond mere chronology. Each sun represents an epoch of creation, the rise and fall of humanity, and the intervention of gods, suggesting a sophisticated attempt to comprehend the cycles of cosmic and terrestrial forces. The floods, in particular, are not merely destructive. They are purifying, resetting the world and establishing conditions for renewal. In this sense, the Aztec flood cycle resonates with other pre-flood myths, from Atlantis and the Viracocha flood to the Hyperborean deluge, revealing a shared human fascination with water as both destroyer and generator of life. Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Some scholars propose that the Aztec accounts may encode astronomical or climatic observations, solar cycles, cometary influences, or even correlations with planetary events. Could the prolonged rains of the fourth sun reflect historical periods of extreme precipitation, perhaps linked to shifts in monsoonal patterns or glacial melt in distant highlands? Others suggest that the myth may have served as a mnemonic device, preserving the wisdom of survival strategies, societal organization, and cosmological understanding across generations. In this way, the story is at once practical, spiritual, and profoundly mysterious. The narrative is enriched by its cultural details. During the end of the fourth sun, the Aztec texts describe not only floods, but also celestial disturbances, divine guidance, and the transformation of survivors. Temples and altars were constructed to honor the gods who presided over these cycles, with intricate carvings and codices encoding both myth and moral instruction. Could these artistic and ritualistic expressions preserve fragments of ancient knowledge, geological, hydrological, or astronomical, that were vital to survival? And if so, how much of this wisdom has been lost or remains hidden beneath layers of history and conquest? Connections to other pre-flood traditions become evident. The Aztec floods, like those of Sundaland, Lake Titicaca, or the 7 Sumerian pre-flood cities, reflect humanity's awareness of catastrophic water events and the need to adapt culturally and spiritually. The myth of transformation, humans becoming fish or otherwise changing form, mirrors other legends of metamorphosis, suggesting that pre-flood narratives worldwide may encode collective memories of extreme environmental events, expressed through allegory and ritual. As the sun rises over the Valley of Mexico, illuminating lakes and pyramids alike, we are left with a sense of continuity and mystery. The Aztec flood cycle is not just a story of destruction. It is a testament to human resilience, the capacity to observe, remember, and encode survival strategies, and the enduring quest to understand forces larger than ourselves. These narratives challenge us to look beyond surface symbolism and consider whether myth preserves genuine echoes of past catastrophes, waiting for those who seek to decipher them. And so, as we gaze upon the shimmering waters of ancient lakes and the volcanic peaks of Mesoamerica, one cannot help but wonder, did the fourth sun's flood occur as history, as legend, or as a blend of both? Could the Aztec record, like those of Atlantis, Hyperborea, and Sundaland, offer hidden insight into a pre-flood world where humanity faced the overwhelming power of water, celestial forces, and the unknown? The enigma endures, inviting us to ponder what truths may still be submerged, waiting to be discovered beneath myth, time, and memory. From the sun-drenched highlands of Mesoamerica and the Valley of Mexico, our journey now turns northeast, to the misted coasts and deep waters of the Black Sea, a region steeped in ancient mystery and geological intrigue. Here, submerged shorelines, sunken forests, and sediment-laden basins hint at a time when waters rose with alarming speed, swallowing lands, displacing communities, and perhaps inspiring some of the earliest flood narratives in human history. This is the story of the ancient Black Sea Deluge, a tale where geology, archaeology, and legend converge in ways that continue to provoke both wonder and debate. Imagine the Black Sea as it may have existed around 7,600 BC. A freshwater lake, ringed by fertile plains and forests, teeming with human settlements along its gentle shores. People lived close to the water, fishing, farming, and trading, unaware that a catastrophic transformation was imminent. Then, according to geological and sedimentary evidence, a massive influx of salt water from the Mediterranean breached the Bosporus, flooding the lake basin in a dramatic and rapid event. The freshwater shores were submerged, forests drowned, and settlements disappeared beneath the rising waves. Could this event be the kernel of the earliest flood stories, passed down across generations and continents? Modern science provides compelling insights. Sediment cores extracted from the Black Sea reveal a sharp transition from freshwater to marine conditions, suggesting a sudden and extensive inundation. Radiocarbon dating aligns this event with the mid-Holocene, a period of dramatic climate shifts, sea level rise, and environmental upheaval. Archaeologists have uncovered submerged structures and traces of ancient habitation, lending tangible evidence to what may have once been a thriving human landscape. But how closely does this correlate with legend? And to what extent have these events been mythologized in stories of divine retribution or pre-flood cataclysm? Ancient historians offer tantalizing clues. Greek writers, such as Herodotus and other chroniclers, speak of vast floods in the northern regions, describing lands reclaimed by the sea and peoples displaced by waters that seemed unstoppable. Could these fragments of memory be cultural echoes of the Black Sea Deluge, preserved across centuries, reshaped into allegory, moral instruction, and ritualized memory? And if so, might they connect to other pre-flood traditions, from Hyperborea to Atlantis, from the Aztec Five Suns to Sundaland, hinting at a shared human awareness of environmental catastrophe? Speculative theories deepen the mystery. Some researchers suggest that the rapid Black Sea flooding may have forced migrations into surrounding regions, seeding stories of the Great Flood across Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and the Levant. Could the deluge have inspired early versions of narratives later codified in Sumerian, Babylonian, and Hebrew texts, influencing the cultural memory of a pre-flood world? Others propose that the sudden transition from freshwater to brackish conditions created dramatic ecological and climatic shocks, potentially explaining legends of vanishing lands, transformed species, and divine judgment. The Black Sea Deluge also invites reflection on the interplay between human observation and myth-making. Survivors of such an event would have faced unimaginable challenges: lost homes, altered landscapes, disrupted food supplies, and the trauma of a world suddenly unrecognizable. Stories passed down in oral tradition may have encoded practical survival strategies, astronomical and hydrological knowledge, or cautionary wisdom about the forces of water and the fragility of human settlement. Were these narratives merely cautionary tales, or do they preserve a sophisticated understanding of environmental cycles now obscured by time? As we consider the Black Sea's submerged forests, drowned shorelines, and sedimentary evidence, it becomes clear that the deluge was not merely a local event. It resonates with a global pattern of pre-flood catastrophes. Just as Atlantis vanished beneath the waves, Hyperborea was overtaken by ice and water, and the fourth sun drowned Mesoamerica. The Black Sea Deluge reminds us of humanity's persistent encounter with natural forces beyond comprehension. In each case, water becomes both destroyer and preserver, erasing civilizations while encoding their memory in myth, stone, and collective imagination. And yet, from the flooded plains of the Black Sea, our journey now turns to the dense jungles and sacred cenotes of Mesoamerica, where the Mayan civilization preserved a profound cosmology intertwined with cycles of creation, destruction, and renewal. At the heart of their myths stands the Ceiba tree, the towering world tree that connects the heavens, earth, and underworld, a symbol both of life and of cosmic upheaval. Among its stories is a tale of a devastating flood, a narrative that echoes across continents and centuries, yet remains shrouded in mystery, waiting to be explored. Picture the lowland jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, mist rising from hidden rivers, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and flowering orchids. In the distance, ceremonial centers emerge, their stone temples and pyramids rising above the canopy like silent witnesses to the passage of time. According to Mayan tradition, during an age of imbalance, the heavens opened and the rains descended. Rivers swelled beyond their banks, lakes overflowed, and the land was submerged beneath a relentless deluge. The Ceiba, rooted deeply in the earth and stretching toward the skies, remained a steadfast witness to the flood, its branches sheltering life, and its roots drawing nourishment from both water and soil. Could this tree, immortalized in myth and ritual, encode knowledge of an ancient environmental catastrophe that left a lasting imprint on human memory? Archaeological and geological studies offer tantalizing hints. Sediment cores from the region reveal evidence of massive flooding events, sudden rises in water levels, and changes in soil composition that suggest periods of extreme rainfall or river overflow in the distant past. These events would have had profound consequences for early agricultural communities, disrupting food production, displacing settlements, and challenging the survival of complex societies. Did these environmental upheavals inspire the myth of the Ceiba flood, transforming natural catastrophe into cosmic allegory? The symbolic depth of the Ceiba tree adds another layer of intrigue. Its roots connect to the underworld, its trunk anchors the terrestrial realm, and its branches reach toward the heavens. In Mayan cosmology, the flood was not simply a destructive force. It was a mechanism of transformation and renewal. Water, in this sense, becomes both destructive and purifying, erasing the old while making way for the new. Could this duality reflect an early understanding of cyclical environmental change, encoded in the metaphors of the world tree and the flood it witnessed? Speculative interpretations invite even deeper reflection. Some researchers propose that the Ceiba flood myth may preserve ancestral knowledge of climate shifts or cataclysmic events, perhaps related to hurricanes, intense monsoons, or geological upheavals that affected river systems and lake basins. Others suggest that the narrative may serve as a symbolic warning, conveying the precarious balance between humanity and the natural world. In this reading, the Kaaba is more than a tree. It is a mediator between human societies and the vast, unpredictable forces that govern survival. The myth also resonates with global pre-flood narratives. Just as the Aztec fourth sun, the Black Sea Deluge, and the Sundaland Submergence recount waters sweeping across the land, the Mayan story situates the flood within a sacred framework, linking it to the cosmos, the gods, and the moral order. Survivors, guided by divine instruction or natural wisdom, navigate a world transformed, their experiences encoded in ritual, myth, and collective memory. Could these stories be independent reflections of similar environmental realities, or are they part of a shared human consciousness attuned to the cycles of water, life, and catastrophe? Material culture preserves fragments of this memory. In codices, murals, and carvings, the ceiba tree appears as a conduit between realms, often depicted alongside water, celestial bodies, and human figures. These artistic expressions may not merely be symbolic. They could encode practical knowledge of survival strategies, environmental observation, or the sacredness of water and life itself. What else might these depictions reveal about how the Mayans understood floods, climate, and the vulnerability of human settlements in the distant past? As the sun filters through the dense canopy, illuminating temples, rivers, and the towering ceiba, one cannot help but sense a profound connection between myth and memory. The Mayan flood story, like so many pre-flood narratives across the globe, is both a cautionary tale and a record of survival, a reminder that humanity has long faced forces far greater than itself. And yet, the mystery endures. Was the Ceiba flood a symbolic allegory, a literal memory of an ancient catastrophe, or a fusion of both? Could the story preserve lost knowledge of environmental events, now obscured by time and the dense jungles of history? As the waters recede and the Ceiba stands sentinel, we are left with a question that echoes across continents and ages. What truths about pre-flood human experience, survival, and cosmic understanding remain submerged, waiting to be rediscovered? From the jungles of Mesoamerica and the waters of the Black Sea, our exploration now carries us northward, beneath the waves of the North Sea, to a land that once connected what we now know as Britain and continental Europe. A land the world has forgotten, Doggerland. Today, this terrain lies hidden beneath hundreds of meters of seawater, yet archaeological, geological, and anecdotal evidence reveals a rich tapestry of human habitation stretching back thousands of years before the catastrophic submergence that reshaped the coastlines and lives of its people. Imagine Doggerland as it existed around 10,000 BC, rolling plains punctuated by forests, rivers that meandered through fertile valleys, and lakes teeming with fish. For the hunter-gatherer communities who lived here, it was a bountiful homeland, rich in resources and sheltered from the harsh northern winters. The land was a bridge between Europe and the British Isles, a corridor of life, trade, and migration. Then, in the span of generations, waters began to rise. Glacial melt and changing sea levels gradually encroached upon this ancient terrain, until at last, a dramatic deluge, perhaps triggered by the breaching of ice dams or sudden climatic shifts, submerged it entirely. Scientific investigation provides a fascinating glimpse into this lost world. Sediment cores from the North Sea reveal layers of peat, soil, and fluvial deposits, evidence of sustained human occupation. Underwater surveys have uncovered remnants of forests, ancient riverbeds, and even stone tools preserved in the sediment. Radiocarbon dating suggests that the final inundation occurred around 6,500 to 6,000 BC, a period when rising waters would have drowned homes, pathways, and sacred sites alike. How did these communities respond to the slow but inexorable advance of the sea? Were there warnings passed through generations, preserved in oral traditions that eventually surfaced in myth? Speculative interpretations add further intrigue. Some scholars propose that Doggerland Submergence may have inspired flood legends that later appeared across northern Europe. Could memories of a land swallowed by the sea be encoded in stories of great floods, vanishing cities, and ancestral warnings? The parallels between Doggerland, Sundaland, and other pre-flood narratives worldwide suggest that humanity has repeatedly witnessed and recorded themes of loss, displacement, and environmental transformation on a scale that challenges comprehension. Beyond the physical evidence, the human element remains haunting. Consider the lives interrupted by this slow-motion catastrophe. Families uprooted, hunters and fishers losing the rivers and plains they relied upon, communities forced to migrate into unfamiliar territories. What oral histories might have survived these upheavals, carried across generations until they were codified in the myths and legends of later European peoples? In this light, Doggerland becomes more than a geological footnote. It emerges as a potent symbol of memory, catastrophe, and the resilience of human societies in the face of relentless natural forces. Intriguingly, the remnants of Doggerland may still speak to us through subtle clues. Underwater sonar scans reveal features resembling ancient river channels, possible habitation zones, and even traces of mammoth and other megafauna that roamed the plains. These discoveries compel us to imagine a world where humans and animals coexisted in a delicate balance, unaware that a future deluge would erase the entirety of their landscape. Could such events have shaped not only myth, but also early human migration, technology, and social organization? The broader implications of Doggerland's submergence extend beyond archaeology into the realm of global pre-flood phenomena. Like the Black Sea Deluge, the Sundaland Submergence, and the Mayan Seba flood, Doggerland represents a stark reminder that the forces of water and climate have repeatedly altered the human experience. The northward migrations, the loss of fertile land, and the reshaping of coastlines would have had profound consequences on the distribution of populations, the development of agriculture, and the cultural memory of catastrophes. Are these echoes of Doggerland's drowning still preserved in European folklore, legends of sunken cities, or ancient warning tales that persist in fragmentary form? As the modern North Sea laps quietly over what was once a vibrant and expansive landscape, the imagination is drawn to what has been lost. Forests submerged, rivers silenced, and communities erased by rising waters. Doggerland remains invisible to the naked eye, yet its presence lingers beneath the waves, a submerged archive of human ingenuity, adaptation, and perhaps warning. And yet, much about Doggerland remains unknown. What secrets of pre-flood human society, of tools, dwellings, and rituals lie hidden beneath the North Sea? Could further exploration reveal tangible connections between these lost lands and the myths, legends, and flood narratives that persist across Europe and beyond? As we peer into the depths, one is left with a haunting question. What truths, long swallowed by the sea, are still waiting to surface, whispering the story of a world that once was? From the submerged plains of Doggerland, our journey now moves eastward, across the vast landscapes of the Indian subcontinent, into the timeless epic of the Ramayana, where the world itself becomes a stage for cosmic drama, and the forces of nature intertwine with divine intervention. Central to this narrative is a flood of unimaginable scale, a deluge that sweeps across lands, reshapes destinies, and tests the endurance of gods, humans, and all living beings. Unlike ordinary floods, the Ramayana portrays a cosmic event, one that bridges myth, history, and perhaps distant memory of environmental catastrophe. Picture the lush forests and winding rivers of ancient India, where the air is thick with humidity and the fragrance of wildflowers, and the sun filters through dense canopies, illuminating temples carved into cliffs and stone platforms along riverbanks. Within this setting, the epic recounts a flood so vast that it inundates villages, forests, and mountains, leaving only the most resilient to endure. The text speaks of rivers overflowing beyond comprehension, celestial forces guiding the waters, and the righteous protected by divine will. Could this poetic rendering hint at real events, extreme monsoons, massive riverine flooding, or climate shifts that reshaped early human settlement in the region? Archaeology offers compelling, if incomplete, clues. Sediment layers in the Ganges-Brahmaputra delta reveal episodes of rapid water level rise, shifts in soil composition, and deposits consistent with large-scale flooding in the mid-Holocene, around 4000 to 5000 BC. Human settlements along these rivers would have been highly vulnerable, reliant on fertile floodplains for crops, yet exposed to sudden inundation. Were these events etched into collective memory, preserved through the poetic language and allegorical storytelling of the Ramayana? Could the epic, in its intricate weaving of divine narrative and human endeavor, serve as a coded record of environmental upheaval? The symbolism of the flood extends beyond mere inundation. Water in the Ramayana is both destructive and purifying, a dual force that annihilates but also prepares the world for renewal. The Deluge challenges heroes, tests moral virtue, and separates the worthy from the unprepared. In this sense, the flood is not simply an event of nature. It is a mechanism of cosmic balance, a trial imposed by the universe itself. Could the epic's emphasis on divine guidance and human resilience reflect early understandings of survival strategies in a world where environmental catastrophes were frequent and unpredictable? Speculative interpretations deepen the intrigue. Some researchers suggest that the Ramayana's flood narrative may encode memories of regional tsunami events, massive cyclones, or shifts in river courses that reshaped coastlines and inland settlements. Others propose that these stories, passed orally for generations before being committed to text, serve as moral allegories intertwined with historical observation. The epic's description of waters consuming forests and towns may resonate with geological evidence, offering a rare intersection of myth and environmental reality. The narrative also invites a reflection on scale and perspective. Unlike localized floods, the Ramayana presents a flood that is simultaneously earthly and cosmic, emphasizing a universe in which natural forces and divine intention are inseparable. This duality challenges our understanding of early human experience. Were these mythic floods purely symbolic, or do they contain remnants of empirical observation, recorded in metaphor and allegory? Could they reflect a sophisticated awareness of climate cycles, seasonal variability, and the profound influence of water on the survival and migration of communities? Artistic and textual preservation amplifies the mystery. Manuscripts, temple carvings, and oral traditions depict waters rising over mountains, serpents and aquatic creatures navigating submerged forests, and heroes guided by divine providence. These images evoke not only awe, but a sense of existential fragility, a recognition that human civilization has always been at the mercy of vast, uncontrollable forces. Could these portrayals encode ancestral strategies for interpreting environmental warning signs or preparing for catastrophic floods? As the monsoon clouds gather over the ancient plains and rivers swell beyond their banks, the Ramayana's flood narrative resonates with a universal theme: water as both destroyer and preserver, as force and teacher. Like Doggerland, Sundaland, or the Black Sea Deluge, it reflects a human encounter with overwhelming natural power, memorialized in story, symbol, and ritual. The epic offers a bridge between myth and memory, reminding us that even the most dramatic narratives may have roots in observable events, recorded with the language and symbolism of their time. Yet much remains unresolved. Was the Ramayana's flood a symbolic allegory, a literal memory of environmental catastrophe, or a fusion of both? Could hidden clues in its descriptions of rivers, rainfall, and submerged lands illuminate events long lost to time? As we reflect on the waters that swept across ancient India, one question lingers. What truths about pre-flood human experience, survival, and cosmic understanding remain submerged, waiting for us to uncover them?